December 4th, Municipal Land Use Board meeting for the Borough of River Edge is 7:32 p.m. We have a quorum, and we're going to rise to do the flag salute. I'll ask our newly elected mayor.
Ready to salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by posting on the bulletin board at Borough Hall, by email, and to the Ridgewood News. The record and submissions to all persons entitled to same as provided by law of a schedule including time and date of this meeting. I would like to remind all members of the public that we have 3 fire exits, one in the back, one over here, and one behind us over there. In addition, we'll be recorded by both audio and video for purposes of creating a public record of this meeting. If any of the members of the public wishes to be recorded, you need only identify yourself by stating your full name and address for the record, and you can make your statement. And the cameras are over there, and that little one looks like R2D2 up there. Roll call, please.
Mayor Papaleo.
Mayor-elect, yes, here.
Mayor-elect. Chair Kellyanne.
Yes.
Ms. Boland.
Yes.
Mr. Bartoloni. Is that an excusal or an absence?
An absence.
Mr. Merman.
Here.
Mr. Grasso.
Here.
Mr. Cray. Absent. Mr. Caslin is absent.
He is excused. He had an event tonight to go to, as is Ms. Boland.
Ms.
Not Ms. Boland, I'm sorry, Bastide.
Steed is excused as well.
Yes.
Mr. Gibbons.
Here.
Okay. First thing up is the approval of minutes. That's the October 16th minutes. And would be myself, Mr. Merman, Mr. Grasso, Mr. Papaleo, and that would be it. Although if anybody has any comments, of course, they're welcome to make them.
Mr. Chairman, I reviewed the minutes and I recommend them for approval or acceptance, whatever you
Do I have
want.
a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstain? Okay.
Didn't we also have October the 2nd minutes?
Do we have
We just
them?
did the
I'm sorry.
16th.
Yep, I didn't see those.
Shame on you.
Okay. So that would be October the 2nd minutes as well. And I don't see those here. So I'm just going to, okay, so that would be myself, Mr. Merman, Mr. Grasso, Mayor-elect Papaleo, Ryan Gibbons, Mr. Cray, and
I have.
that's it.
Now,
Oh, for him?
Jim, if you want to...
Here.
That's what I have. We're good.
It's got a memo.
Anybody, any comments?
No, Mr. Chairman, I'll recommend the October the 2nd minutes as submitted be approved.
I have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstained? I would just like to point out that our board secretary, I can't remember the last time I've gone through several months of minutes without some sort of corrections. So we thank you for your accuracy. You've been doing a wonderful job, so thank you very much
Work
for
with
that.
the lawyers, you know?
Now she can ask for a raise.
Not my money. Well, actually, that is your money.
Thank you.
Okay, so next up, I have the. Next up, we'll skip over the master plan until the end of the meeting. We'll go for completeness review. Mr. Cha and Ms. Cha, come on up. Good evening, folks. How are you? Have a seat. So at this point, all we're going to do is go over your application to make sure everything is in order, so it's complete for a hearing.
Sure.
So, Tom?
I'm familiar with the application. To be honest, I don't have the materials with me. Being familiar with the application and knowing that nothing been submitted to the application this evening.
Okay. And they're looking to do a driveway expansion and a retaining wall and a fence. Any specific questions on the application from the board? At that point, I will look for a motion to deem this complete for hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
That was moved by Mr. Gibbons, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Just trying to find his name on the list. And it was seconded by Mr. Merman.
Correct.
Mayor Papaleo?
Yes.
Elect? Chair Killian?
Yes.
Ms. Boland?
Yes.
Mr. Merman?
Yes.
Mr. Grasso?
Yes.
And Mr. Gibbons?
Yes.
All right, folks, I'll be calling you back up in a few minutes.
Sure, thank you.
The next application is Sende Sushi LLC, 651 Kindercamac Road, Block 614, Lot 8002, for a sushi restaurant. Good evening, Counselor.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I represent the applicant, and I believe everything's been submitted. It's to convert what was the fine gift store at the strip mall into a sushi restaurant, a Korean and Japanese restaurant. The space has been vacant for probably close to 2 years now, and so my client currently operates a sushi restaurant in Emerson. That area is being redeveloped, and as a result, he needed to relocate.
Tom?
I've reviewed the application materials, I think we have enough to move forward, and I say that because I think the applicant is prepared with a form which they intend to show, so we're going to get an overview of the proposed restaurant, which I don't believe you have.
That's correct. We have with us the applicant himself, our engineer, we also have our architect.
Counselor?
I review the notice, it's sufficient, this board has jurisdiction.
Wonderful. I'll entertain a motion to move this forward.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Move right along.
Ryan first, Mr. Merman second.
Same vote as before.
Mhm.
So, Mayor-elect Papaleo?
Yes.
Chair Killian?
Yes.
Ms. Boland?
Yes.
Mr. Bartoloni is absent. Mr. Merman?
Yes.
Mr. Gibbons?
Yes.
And Mr. Grasso?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I apologize, I should have asked you, is the notice and everything is in order for Cha as well?
It is?
I apologize for
Well,
that.
that's quite all right. I was gonna make that statement at some point.
Okay. So, with that, Mr. and Mrs. Cha, you can come back up again. So welcome. What we like to do in the beginning is just get a brief description of what you're looking to accomplish.
Yes, sir. So,
Oh, I'm sorry.
Raise your right hand, please. You swear affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Please state your names for the record.
Jason Chung.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for having us. Good evening, everyone. As outlined in the letter of non-compliance written by Mr. Thomas Jones, we are seeking various relief for some of the ordinance requirements for two ordinances that were outlined in that letter. One is the maximum approved lot coverage, and the second is the maximum wall fence height. Just to give a quick summary, background, we bought our home about 4 years ago, and when we bought the home, it was a renovated home, but what was not done was the backyard. So it was just dirt, and they just threw some seed on it. Ultimately, we were able to, at this point, take that up. And so we have, we're on Adams Avenue, 269 Adams Avenue, which is a sloping street. And so as part of that, the main thing we needed to do was build a retaining wall between our house and the house next to us, which is on this declining part of the slope. So we did that. It's about 3.5, 4 feet tall retaining wall. We also did a retaining wall on the other side, so that's more for, just to keeping the property, line as well as the, during rain, dirt, and the movement of land over time. So there was cinder blocks that were all broken up, that were probably put in place on both sides about 30 plus years ago. So those were broken down and moved, and so we had to fix that. So that was the priority. In so doing, we also leveled out ground because it's on a slope. We have 2 young kids, and so it now gives them, or gives us the ability to go out and for them to play. Before it was declining. The highest part, the lowest part was probably about 3 feet in levelness. So we leveled it off. And so the main part is from our house to the, you know, Mr. Murphy's address? Yeah, we don't know that. But the home that's lower than us, that retaining wall is flush with our backyard. His ground is about 3.5, 4 feet below that. And so we want to build a fence there so that we don't have people, again, it's level with our ground, so we want to make sure that there's a fence there that, for safety reasons, no one can fall over that. And then on the other side, we want to put a fence as well, because their home is actually at the top of the 5th Avenue, which I guess the maximum, their home to our level is probably a good 20 feet. Yeah.
It is a corner property.
Yeah, the corner property, so we want to, the wall is about 2.5 feet.
Mm-hmm.
And then put the fence there as well. They have trees growing over. So those are the 2 main things, sir, as well as the board. We want to seek approval for the wall, or I'm sorry, the fence next to the wall. And then, yes, and also as part of the backyard, we want approval for a patio, small patio area. Right now we have steps that go down from our backyard, the back door. There's 2 steps onto the backyard ground. But there we want to build pavers and build a patio area. So that's the backyard situation, and in the front yard we have a driveway which is 11 feet wide, and we want approval to expand that so that we can have 2 cars side by side to be able to park that. We have our kids, our parents coming by, and we have 2 cars ourselves, so we want to be able to park on the driveway and not park on the street, again, for safety reasons. So that's really the gist of our what we're seeking.
Mr. Behrens.
So, John, thank you for the good introduction. That was a nice summary of the proposal. So, as you mentioned, there's 2 aspects to the application, and I'll begin with the fence. And the reason we're here for a variance is that, as Mr. Cha explained, they basically replaced the existing retaining walls with conforming retaining walls. One of the walls is about 4 feet tall and absolutely needs a safety fence as required by code, which automatically puts the wall above the maximum permitted 6-foot height. And the ordinance isn't really clear in terms of how that 6 feet is measured. I think in one case the fence is actually on top of the wall, bringing it above 6 feet. I think there's been flexibility in the past that if there's been a setback between the fence and the wall, that there's enough differentiation. But when it's either directly adjacent to or on top, that 6-foot limitation applies. So in the one case, the smaller wall adjacent to the patio is about 2 feet in height. So the 6-foot fence brings it up to a maximum of about 8 feet. I think it's lower in some places, but about a maximum of 8 feet high. Then you have the other wall, which is a height of about 4 feet, and I believe it's a 6-foot fence on top. Adjacent, what's the plan now? So directly adjacent to the wall would bring it to about the appearance of about a 10-foot wall, which, again, they need some type of fencing. I think code, I forget if it's 36 inches or 42.
42.
What was it, 42?
I think it's 42. No.
I think it's 42, so,
Yeah.
all right. So they, by default, they need a safety fence to keep people from falling off the wall. So that's the one issue, and the impervious coverage issue has to do with They purchased a house where the developer basically maxed out the impervious coverage. They have a driveway and steps out to the backyard. They're proposing a 383 square foot patio in the rear and a driveway expansion of, I can't recall what the existing width is, but a new maximum width of 18.5 feet, which increases that driveway from 450 square feet to 762 square feet, which is an increase of about 300 square feet. In total, the increase is about 696 square feet on the 6,000 square foot lot. The one recommendation I would have in considering the driveway is that if the board is inclined to approve the 18-foot and the increase in impervious coverage, that they maintain a minimum 2-foot setback from the property line. It's required by ordinance technically, and I think it's achievable here. It would go into the paver walkway a little bit, but it would give the neighbor a little bit of a little more wiggle room. And again, it's a requirement, frankly. So on the one hand, with the fence, you do have a sloping property, so there seems to be somewhat of a hardship there. And then I guess it's just a question of whether or not the fences are impactful or not. And again, on the one side, you absolutely need the fence because of the fall hazard. So there's a question there too. And I believe in the vicinity of that property, there are other retaining walls with fences on top, so it's not an unusual condition on that sloping property that goes essentially down from 5th Avenue to Elm. With regard to the impervious coverage, again, the lot's maxed out. There's an opportunity to possibly get some additional cars off of the street. I believe you have a seepage pit already,
Yes.
as per the survey. I don't think it shows it on this plan. You said that there's one in the front too?
Yes, I believe so.
So there's,
It's in the...
We saw that in some of the plans that the town has.
so just, I guess, if the board's inclined to approve this, to whatever extent that maybe there's just some review to make sure that it's adequate in terms of, capturing any additional runoff. And then, I mean, in River Edge, it's common to have an outdoor patio area and I guess a safe entrance into the rear of the house. And I guess it's just a question of, size. Does that additional 383 square feet cause any impact, or is it inconsistent with zoning? I think those are the issues at hand.
So to me, it looks like there's a significant increase in coverage from what's allowable. 35 is allowable. They started out with 34.7, which is, like you said, pretty much maxed out. And now they're looking to get to about 43 and a half. So that's a sizable coverage for River Edge. But let's discuss it. I'll start over with Ryan.
So the side, I'm just trying to get a vision of this. We'll just start with the fencing. I assume this side with the potentially 10-foot high fence is the one going to your downward neighbor?
Yes, sir.
So it's a 4-foot retaining wall that we basically had to have to make that safe.
Right, 4 foot from the other property side.
So that
Really flush with our property from our side, from our land.
So it's more going to be, feel like a 10-foot fence from their side, not technically from
Only 6 from our side.
from your side. It's just because that wall is 4 feet from the neighbor's side. Okay, so then have you considered using not a 6-foot fence, a 4-foot fence to kind of not have that 10-foot space?
I guess part of it is that, so we're surrounded by 1, 2, 3, and maybe 3.5. There's a portion of another home that's surrounding our property. The home that's directly adjacent to the rear part of our lot, they have a 6-foot wooden fence. So aesthetically, I think it's more aesthetic. At this point, we do need a wall. To your question, can it be a 4-foot, 6-foot? Aesthetically, we did want to cover from our property, that wooden fence on the back side of the wall, and to match on the side part of our lot.
So you didn't want it,
Yeah, yeah, so you like, so before and then.
that,
Yeah.
okay. That's my main question for now, I'm sure Mr. Merman has some questions.
I usually like to keep you for the last, but being that.
Go ahead,
started on
go
my
ahead,
right-
no.
Go ahead, Mr. Murphy.
Well, I will admit that I am confused.
Yeah, let's go to Tom. Go ahead, Dick, go ahead.
Let's start with the walls. Your drawing shows, and I'm referring to the drawing prepared by your mason, shows the remains of a masonry wall on the uphill side, which is the west side. It goes from basically the residence, well, along the left side of the residence towards the street for some distance. Okay. Is that being replaced? Or is it replaced already?
So the retaining wall, the new retaining wall was only partially along that property line, sir. So from, to the rear of our home, the back, so let's see what west, and then this would be the south part.
So as I look at the house, it's the right side.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. To the right, all the way to the back,
Mm-hmm.
only up to where it says fence.
Okay.
So that was the, reading through the retaining wall all the way.
So that would be a new retaining wall.
We replaced the broken down, retaining wall, and it's now new.
It's already in place.
Yes, sir. We got the approval for that, and so that.
You got the approval for that.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
That was done by permit and,
okay,
the wall.
that's fine. It's part of my confusion. Now, your drawing, as I said, shows remains of masonry wall, again on the right side, from the end of what you just stated was replaced towards the street. And it doesn't give the extent as to where it ends towards the street. Is that remaining in place, or is that being replaced?
Those were removed, but not replaced. It was only replaced up to, so from the back,
Yeah,
up to where it says. The paper.
I see that. Now we're going beyond that towards the street.
Right, so that's.
The drawing says remains of masonry wall. What's happening to that wall?
So those were broken down, and so those are cleaned up, but not replaced.
And you're requesting to replace that wall?
No, sir.
Okay, all right, so fine. So it stays as is. Okay. Let's go over to the other side, the downhill side.
Right.
Are there any new walls proposed along that property line?
No new walls, sir. Those were already.
They're already in place, okay.
Right.
Okay. Now, let's stick with the walls.
1 second, Nick. Were those walls put up by the builder of the house, or were they there previously?
The builder of the house, left all the.
So those are previous walls?
Right.
Okay.
But we did replace them now, because we already received the permits for the retaining walls, and those are, that's.
So they're all replaced?
All right.
Sorry,
No, that's fine. Now you know why I was confused.
Mhm.
Okay. And I still am. Let's talk fencing along those sides. Okay. From the ground to the top of the fence, let's look at the left side. Excuse me, let's look at the right side, which is the uphill side. How high is the fence itself from the ground to the top of the fence that you're proposing?
From the ground
The
to,
top of the fence. Forget about the height of the
it'll be about 8 feet.
So you're looking for an 8-foot side yard.
Right.
Tom, what's the max along the side yard? 6?
I believe it's 6.
Six.
And if it's the length that you're talking about,
Yeah.
next to the patio, I believe?
Which side it got,
Well, it's the right side.
Yeah, that's the west side.
Yeah, the west side, the uphill side. So you're asking for you're requesting an 8-foot fence.
So there'll be a 6-foot fence from,
Oh, we want that fence height. Don't give me, so you're talking
To the
a
ground.
8-foot high fence. And that fence would extend from where to where? From the rear corner
yes, rear corner
all the ways to?
to where the wall is.
Okay, so that's, okay, that's,
And if I may, can I
sure, go ahead.
distribute these photos?
All right,
Let the attorney mark them as
you
evidence.
gotta mark them in there.
So these photos, well,
Nope. Go here first. Oh, they're all the
We
same.
have a pecking order.
yes, sir,
Okay.
those are all the same. We only
Mark
have
them,
what,
I'll
four
mark them
copies?
as A1. Why don't we do this? Let's mark the first set as A1, they appear to all be the same photos.
All right,
I'm going to ask you to describe what these photos depict, who took them and when they were taken,
Right.
and we'll go from there and then
Absolutely.
bring up the rest. So,
Pass to, one way, pass to the other.
So those photos were taken today, and my wife asked me to pick them up from CVS on my way to work. So,
Funny dude.
they're hot off the presses.
taking it.
okay.
And so that's, Mr. Murray, to your questioning,
Mhm.
that's the right side of our property line, and the existing,
The right side, I'm looking.
The west side.
The west, I'm looking uphill side.
You're saying the uphill side, right?
yes,
Which is
Okay.
the west side.
The west side, okay.
west side.
Okay,
So that's the existing wall as it stands today.
Okay.
Which is the new wall that was,
Okay.
a broken wall.
so this is the wall, oh, here's an extra one here. So this is the wall that's been replaced basically in the backyard, in the rear yard,
So
okay.
that wall basically comes up to where their property
Mm-hmm,
ends and where we begin, and so there's maybe about 2 feet higher on our property, so hence the wall. You'll notice that there's a whole bunch of trees
mm-hmm,
the other property's line. Their property continues to slope upwards, where
Yep.
their home is actually 20 feet
Yep.
higher than
Yep.
where the wall
Yep.
is. Their trees are probably about 10,
Okay.
12 feet higher than the wall. So
Alright.
even with, one of the reasons why we wanted a 6-foot fence on top of the level of the wall was, again, their property, the trees will far exceed even where the fence is. And for aesthetic reasons, we did want to try to cover some of that. The
Alright.
trees are pretty, I mean, it's, as you can see, there were big giants that they said they planted maybe 10, 20 years ago, and they've grown real big. And so that's really what we're dealing with on that side, on the west side.
so can I paraphrase what you just told me?
Please.
Normally, we permit 6-foot high side yard fences. And you're requesting to put in an 8-foot high. And the reason you want that is you really don't want to look at this, I'll be kind, mess.
Mr. Merriman, I'm confused, because I thought you said the fence is 6. A few moments ago,
No,
is the fence
6 is permitted.
You know, this is where I think it's confusing. Is the fence itself 6, or is the fence itself 8?
The fence is 6,
That's what I'm
but
saying.
I believe your question was,
So it's a combination of the wall and the fence.
That makes it 8.
The top of the fence is 8 feet off the
Okay,
ground.
so you want to put a 6-foot high fence there,
yes, sir, on top of the wall.
Right, not 8.
which is,
6.
okay, good, which is permitted.
Mm-hmm.
All
It's
right.
just gonna have the appearance of 8 because it has 2-foot
Well-
wall underneath it.
So he, as far as I'm concerned, he does not really need a variance for the fence.
Tom, what is the
The
statute?
fence is self-standing.
6 foot, is the statute that it has to be 6 foot from the ground, or it has to be 6 foot?
No,
The ordinance isn't very clear, but, so there are 2 parts to this. One is the yard regulations of the ordinance, which talks about, it says, self-supporting fences and walls may project into any required yard area, provided that any accessory retaining fence or wall is not higher than allowed per the section that allows a maximum fence height of 6 feet. Typically, the way that would be viewed is that, again, when they're on top of each other, they would be viewed in conjunction. If there was a setback, I think there'd be a little more flexibility, but
So
if you don't think there is, that's your interpretation.
you saying that your interpretation is that the fence height is added to the wall height to give you a total height?
It's not explicit in the ordinance, but it typically would be viewed as such.
I've never seen that before in various towns.
The only, Dick, the only thing I'm gonna interject here with what Mr. Behrens is saying, what's to stop somebody from putting up a 5-foot wall and then putting another 6-foot fence on top of it, if you're not gonna go from the base of the property to the top of the fence? So realistically, even though it's a 6-foot fence, it's being elevated by a 2-foot wall, which we don't have a variance for, an ordinance for. So when you're putting it on top of it, I could see where Mr. Behrens would think that a variance would be required. Otherwise, again, I'll put a 6-foot wall up and then put a 6-foot fence on top of that, and I only have a 6-foot fence.
Yeah, it has to be the obstruction.
Right.
But now technically, this fence is not going on top of the wall.
No,
It's going
it's
on the
self-standing.
other side of the wall.
Correct.
On the one hand, it is actually going on top because the wall runs along the property line, and you can't have it below that. You know, so there's the wall.
So it's actually going to be into this concrete or whatever these stones
The
are.
one is physically going to be on top of the wall. The one on the west side, the smaller wall, is going to be on top. And that's the one that, in my opinion, impacts really them. It doesn't impact the neighbors so much. The other one, I believe, is going to be adjacent to the wall and not directly on top of the wall.
All right.
The ordinance, admittedly, is not perfectly clear, so
Okay.
I would err on the side of caution, and let's just, if we're gonna grant that relief, then we grant it as such with the height.
Okay. So you're proposing a 6-foot high fence, which what, vinyl? Okay. Which would be mounted on top of this wall. All right. Under Circumstances, I agree that it's adding a function of screening purposes. Okay. All right. So much for that. All right. So if there's a variance involved on that section, I personally have no problem. Okay. I'm not going to go further discussion about measuring where
one
it
of the
is.
reasons we're discussing this too, they had to come for the impervious coverage variance anyway.
Yeah.
And the
Okay.
issue becomes if they come in for a
Right.
permit down the road,
We'll,
then this may or may not become an issue. So they're here anyway. If
Okay.
we determine there is relief necessary, this helps them in the future.
Okay.
They can move on,
Mhm.
replace the fence.
Now, let's go to the other side, the downhill side. You have a wall up there already? No? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Are you putting a fence over there also?
Yes, sir.
And that-
From the back corner
Yeah?
up to
The-
where the AC units are.
Okay,
So the proposal, sir, is to put
okay.
the fence wrapped around.
Okay, now that fence is gonna be mounted where? On top of the wall
No.
or behind the wall?
It'll be on our property, our side,
Behind the wall.
yes,
And how high is that proposed?
6 feet.
6 feet.
So it'll be 6 feet
Okay.
from our property.
All right. And 6-foot high fence, Mr. Behrens, is permissible, correct?
6 foot is allowed.
On the side yard, okay, so, all right, so the only issue with fences we have right now is the height on the uphill side. Okay. Are you fencing in anything else?
And then, so the vinyl fencing
Is gonna continue along there?
will wrap around from the west side, east side, and along the back.
Oh, okay, rear yard. And that's gonna be mounted on where?
Into the ground.
Into the ground, okay.
Mr. Marmon, if I may just interject for a moment, the applicant just handed a series of photographs, they're all the same. I've marked them as A2. Do you want to describe what this photo is intended to depict?
So this is our backyard. If you look over to the
You
left
you can
side,
see it over here.
if you look over to the left
Yeah.
side, that's our neighbor who is lower than us,
Mm-hmm.
and the ground, which is rock at this point. The wall is holding back our side of the property, but we don't see any part of it.
So you're proposing also to put a 6-foot high, self-standing fence along your rear property line? Okay. So you're gonna fence out, you're gonna screen out an existing fence? Okay. No problem.
And that's your neighbor's fence, the green fence?
No, it's not the green, it's a board and batten.
What is
It's
it?
a wooden
No, what's back here?
No, right here,
Okay.
that's a board and batten.
He's talking about the backyard.
Okay.
Rear yard, yeah.
Which one is your fence?
So the wooden fence is
Board
our
man.
rear neighbor's backyard.
That's the back
Okay.
side of the
Their fence that we
Yeah.
see.
So you want a fence
Okay.
here?
And if you look left of that, that's our
So you're gonna
lower
have-
neighbor's house, the back of the house.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Now, that takes
Yeah.
care of fencing and walls. Okay. Impervious coverage. I believe you have, according to what I've heard, 34.7% of coverage right now, before you do anything.
No, 37.
34.7.
Yeah, it's 34,
.7.
almost a half.
Okay. Where is that written? All right. And
I think page
so you
4.
got a plan, oh, it's in the application. Okay.
Yeah, it's right here.
Okay. And you're planning to put in additional impervious, which is a driveway width increase, and a patio roughly 20-foot square in the rear yard. Okay. And that will take you to what percentage? I think you said 40, what is it?
43 and a half.
43.5. Wow. Here we go. All right. I looked at that the other day. All right, percentage-wise, you're about at my personal threshold. Under this scenario, I'm not really worried. The driveway drop curb, which is the curb that you come onto the driveway with, is that 18 and a half feet now, or you're proposing it to be 18 and a half feet?
We're proposing
18 and a half
I'm
feet.
sorry, the driveway, the curb itself won't be increasing.
No, your new pavement where it meets the curb is 18 and a half feet on the drawing. Is that gonna be the new opening? The drop curb?
So we asked Steve, Franklin,
Okay.
who's our contractor, to join us.
Go ahead.
Come on up.
You don't have to swear him in there.
He has to get sworn in, we'll find out who he is. Come on up.
Good evening. Please raise your right hand. You swear affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Please state your full name for the record.
Stephen Slackman, President of Steve's Masonry, 30 Sapphire Lane, Chestnut Ridge, New York, 10977.
I'm sorry, Mr. Slackman, is it S-L-A-C-K-M-A-N?
Yes.
Okay, and what's your property address? What's your business address?
30 Sapphire, S-E-P-H-A-R, Lane, that's in Chestnut Ridge, New York.
Thank you.
Steve, are you increasing the width of the drop curb?
Yeah, yes,
In the new,
that's so you can pull it in and out.
right, the new drop curb, you're proposing at 18 and a half.
No, I'm sorry. He's actually probably not gonna do the driveway. But we're not increasing the curb.
The curb cut's gonna remain the same.
Like, that's what I'm,
she's saying now, the curb cut's gonna remain the same.
curb cut does not change. Okay, that's fine. That's all I need to know. That was my
We don't wanna
question.
see more money.
All right, okay.
Okay? If I can provide any clarification on the fence.
No, that's all right.
So you're the fence guy, not the concrete guy?
So,
You did the walls too.
he does the pavers, but not the, okay.
No, I did the neighbors, the fence, the walls.
Okay, all right. So the curb, we've established that the curb cut remains as is.
Correct.
Okay, and all you're doing is putting additional, impervious area to park vehicles?
Correct.
Okay. All right, so we have no issue with the curb cut.
And the driveway's gonna be made of
As,
pavers or asphalt?
No, asphalt.
Asphalt, okay.
yeah, asphalt, okay. And you've got roughly, for the board's edifice, they're showing 18.5 feet wide pavement, and that's just about what you're gonna have at the minimum to get 2 cars side by side. So we can't really reduce, it's not excessive, let's put it that way.
Well, right now they have 2 cars worth of capability. They're asking for a 4-car capability now.
Well, yeah, but the button, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I guess I'm no longer confused.
Just for clarification, when you said the 43.5% coverage, was that within your within what you
My
agree with?
personal, it's at my personal threshold.
Because I didn't hear what you said.
Okay, no,
Just wanted-
it's basically,
Okay.
yeah, it's basically at my, yeah. And I'm not gonna pull out a couple of pavers to,
Okay. You good,
I'm good right now, yeah.
Mayor?
So, I agree with the fencing. I don't have any issues with the fencing. I think the fencing is practical, reasonable. Do have some concerns about going from 34.7 to 43.5. Now, for me, my personal limit would be 42 because that's 20% above the borough's ordinance. The real issue for me is, and correct me if I'm wrong, if not, and certainly elaborate if you like, but it's a bit of a slope on that street.
Yes, it is.
So you're asking to go to 43.5 on a street that already has a rather dramatic slope. And so my concern is that's a lot of water moving down the street on a normal day. But by going up more than 20% from the borough's ordinance, I'm concerned for your neighbors, the neighbor next to you on the east side, and the neighbor after that on the east side, and the neighbor that on the east side, because you're increasing the impervious coverage in the back of the yard and in the front of the yard, and I feel free to speak to it, but I'm not really comfortable with going more than 20% on a street that slopes so greatly when it could have a very obvious negative impact on your neighbors 2, 3, 4 lots down. So I feel free, I haven't decided how I'm going to vote on that, but feel free to, talk to that.
Sure, I'll try my best. So, we don't have a copy of,
If you want, if I can provide some clarification.
I'm thrilled if they want you to speak.
Just come back up together.
David Slackman. On the site currently, we installed the new retaining walls on the property, they're permitted. We installed, usually when you build a retaining wall, you want to put drainage behind the walls, perforated piping. So any water that would, in theory, any water, that takes the pressure off the walls to keep the walls from moving. In the past, the walls that were there were failing walls. So that was in the there was no drainage in place to absorb any of that, to pick up any accommodate for any of that water. So now we're in the plus now, because now we just put brand new walls in with perforated piping and gravel, right? So the water's going to percolate into that gravel. So you're in a different situation as you were before. So theoretically, if the water, so the road's higher, so where the patio is, if the water were to migrate across the property, just for if it were theoretically to, that water would go into the gravel.
That would be in the backyard.
Yes.
What about in the front yard?
The front yard, the wall does continue from the back left corner of the property all the way towards the road. It becomes minimal elevation of the wall as it approaches the front road. But there's a drainage system all behind the whole wall that was inspected by municipal.
So you're saying, because it doesn't show on either one of the, it doesn't show either one of the documents that we have, okay? You're saying there is drainage from the rear of the property all the way to the
Correct.
curb. I mean, not the curb, to the sidewalk.
Yeah. It's perforated, four is perforated, Schedule 35 piping with gravel
Okay.
behind the whole wall.
That's behind the wall.
Yeah.
So it's not the whole length of the property.
No, the wall starts in the back left corner of the property, starts at, has a maximum height of roughly, say, 3.5 feet. And then it comes all the way up towards the sidewalk.
So
Tapers.
we have, could you just come up for a second? You're saying we have perforated pipe
Yep.
from here to here.
Yep.
Well, then, that actually leads me to two more questions.
Sure.
I don't want to block everybody else.
I'm sorry.
No, I don't want to. So, if that's the case, then aren't you going to be covering that up when you widen the road?
There's a 2-foot setback you guys are asking for between the retaining wall.
Okay, because that's not on the plans. We talked about it, but it hasn't been agreed
Yeah,
to.
so, assuming we can leave that 2-foot setback and put like river rock stone or something.
So that would mean that you're not widening it to 18.5, you're widening it to 16.5.
That's what I think we were speaking possibly.
I was
about.
talking the curb cut.
The curb cut's gonna remain the same, but if we could shift it over 2 feet to the right possibly, so they can get the 18.5. You really need that at least 9 feet to open up here to have 2 cars side by side.
Okay. So what you're suggesting as a compromise, if the rest of the board is interested in this, is that we shift this 2 feet to this 2 feet,
Correct.
and that way we can maintain the piping that's already there and its usefulness.
Exactly, then we could just bring in, well, right now, there's grass there, but on those 2 feet, what I could do is I could just put river rock stone over there, between the wall, river rock stone, and then the driveway, just to make it look nice.
Okay.
And the water will percolate into that.
Well, that certainly helps a lot. Now, I don't see on this plans, nor did I read it, and I'm not an expert in this area. You say there is a seepage pit, but it's not listed anywhere. It doesn't seem like we have evidence of it.
So my wife, she saw the architectural plan, which I think was on file here in this building. So we didn't obtain a copy of it, but did you have?
I mean, I can vouch for it. They came in to look at the approved plans for when the house was built.
Yeah.
And it showed a seepage pit in the approximate, somewhere in the vicinity of the patio. I believe because the property has since been leveled a little bit, that it may be underground, which is okay, because the leaders, it's a subsurface structure. I haven't seen it myself, but I believe if it was a condition of approval, I don't know if it's fair to assume anything, but it probably was reviewed at some point internally by the building department. Again, I haven't seen it myself. I saw it.
So when we put the patio in, there would be a requirement that the leader pipes not get covered by the patio. Is that correct?
Well, the way that it works, so from the roof, there's the gutter and the leader pipes that go to this, basically bin.
So it's feeding from the house.
Feeding from the house, correct, not from the patio itself.
No, it's the roof drainage.
Yeah, it's for the roof drain, sorry if I wasn't clear about that. As far as the patio goes, the backyard's fairly level, so it would pretty much drain onto the backyard at probably minimal slope.
I'm just going to interrupt just for a second.
Sure.
I have a question. So you've got the water trending down toward the wall that has the piping in it and the gravel, and you've got when you've got the water percolating into the gravel, where's the water going from there?
Well, the fact that the water goes into the water will percolate into the gravel, into the ground.
Well, what happened, I mean, because of the topography of the property, the water's going to be,
No, but like, here's the whole process behind it, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's on like a dry well or a seepage pit, the same thing. Water goes into, what that does is water accumulates in the area, and then it goes into the ground. The ground absorbs it.
Would it be advantageous, instead of that, along with the perforated pipe and the gravel, instead to have a pipe to go into the seepage pit?
And that's up to you, that's up to you.
Would that work better than asking the ground to absorb so much water just in the one spot that's on the edge of the property line?
When I was doing the job and I spoke with the municipal engineer, he felt as that was adequate, the way, you know, the way you had it.
Well, any approval is going to be subject to his review anyway, so.
But, so I'm confused a little bit, because again, this is not my areas of expertise. You're saying there's stone, there's a pipe
Perforated pipe.
that's buried underground, and there's no stone above it.
No, there's all stone above the whole pipe.
Okay,
So when you build a wall, here's the wall,
but what pipe purpose does the pipe
just
serve?
directs the flow of the water.
To where?
Directs the flow of the water, have the pipe, it goes into the ground.
Because it's perforated all around, so
It's directed, really the water's going in the ground.
Oh,
So there's no outlet on that perforated pipe?
There's no, I asked the village engineer, and he said we backfill with tons of gravel, and he said to put the pipe,
All right.
install the pipe,
yeah, but he's doing that, he was basically approving that before the patio and before the widening of the driveway. So this is a new situation.
If I.
I'm good.
I think we'll get some better direction from Ms. Boland. Hi.
I think what would happen if it's a lot of flow, eventually it will go through the wall. It will actually, if you direct too much to it, it'll just end up on the neighbor once it overflows.
No, I agree, but regardless, the neighbor, the rural, everybody's gonna tie the low, you know? We're uphill and the neighbor's downhill and so on, so we can, you know, we can minimize.
I'm just not sure that the gravel is going to help as far as enough storage to make a difference. A seepage pit would be a larger area.
So I would assume that there's a seepage pit just needed storm drains, and then, you know, the walls and everything else.
The borough engineer may require a third seepage pit for the new increase in impervious.
Again, and all of our approvals are subject to review from our borough engineer for water management, so that's automatic.
I do take issue with the wall on the side that you haven't put the fence on yet, where you're affecting the neighbor, and it's the 4 feet plus the 6 feet, because he's the one the most affected by this 10-foot wall. It looks like a 10-foot fence. I think that maybe if you offset it with enough space that you could do some planting, so that would break the wall and the fence, just as you have some plantings, the neighbor on your upside has some plantings. It would help break the
This one
the height.
and she's saying push it back.
Oh,
I'm sorry,
No,
she's saying push this one back.
Yeah, this side wall.
the wall's already in.
The wall's there,
Yeah.
and she's saying put the fence
But at
here.
the
In front of
time,
the wall.
Marty says A3.
Except the gravel will not really
Not
break
green, that's just what he's saying, that's what she's saying.
the wall.
And I've seen a lot of properties on River Edge, because some of them look as this. Whenever, you know, when you're on those streets like Adams, Monroe, all the Presidents, as they are sloping down, because of all, you know, the incline, there are a lot of retaining walls and fencing.
No.
That's just my opinion, that if you gave a little bit more space, the plantings would do a better job in cutting it.
Are you saying between the retaining wall on the east side?
That's correct.
This is what you know.
So you only see the fence, but your neighbor sees the fence and the wall, and now if he can
Usually
plant,
offset it.
if there's some plantings between the wall and the fence, it would not be as much of an impact on your neighbor.
Like an ivy or something like, if we were to plant, just to minimize, because the property, the backyard's pretty small. If we were to have the wall, a gap, and then to plant some ivy or something to train over the wall or something, something like that. So this, on the, for my client also, as you drive up and down the hill, say you're driving the lower part of the hill, coming uphill, you can see in their whole backyard, and I'm sure they have little kids and they want it to be as, you know, as private as possible. They can entertain and not everybody looking inside the backyard.
I'm sorry, who are you worrying about?
No, I'm just saying, if we could put some type of plant like ivy or clematis growing on the exterior of the wall to, you know, to benefit the neighbor below. If they were, you know, if you guys were able to keep the fence at 6 feet tall.
What does the board
You
think?
wanted to put space between the wall and the fence.
Yeah, but we could use a minimal space if we're gonna plant like some kind of vine, clematis or something.
Well, you'd have to put it on the wall, or you'd have to put it on the wall, or you'd have to put it over, but you said you have a pipe there, You can't put it into the pipe.
I could offset it.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Part of the reason,
I didn't understand.
part of the reason, Ms. Nolan, is
Pipe is at
if
the
you look
base
at
of the
the western
is
property line, you'll notice that
this
there's
wall.
AC units,
Good question.
and the AC units are right next to our home. So the space between the home, so the home, the AC units, and then the wall, that space is only about, I don't see, maybe 4 feet.
Usually you put stone in here,
So
and
then
the
if
pipe
you're
is down here.
proposing to move the wall even further.
Here's a
in,
grade here.
It's gonna be minimal
Here's the
space
upper grade.
to get around from the front to the back, and vice versa.
So you want to keep the water.
You mean to move the fence?
I want to keep,
Well, you want to keep it out of the basement.
Now we are trying to.
I mean, it's a small lot, so we're trying to maximize what we can do with the lot that we have. So to then move the fence in further, we'll lose, whatever, that portion.
Except that now your neighbor's affected because instead of you being affected, they're affected. That's my only comment.
Mr. Grasso?
My comment is on the wall where you have we were discussing before with the perforated pipe, my only concern is that based on the impervious coverage of the lot, that the ground is not going to be able to percolate that much water in that spot, and maybe either hooking it into one of the existing seepage pits, or like Ms. Boland suggested, an additional seepage pit. I think maybe like a review from the borough engineer, he would definitely know better. But I'm just concerned with the amount of impervious coverage, and if that ground there becomes saturated, the water is still, going to end up going to the neighbor.
But keep in mind, the patio is roughly, it's 383 square feet. So think about a 20 by 20 area. It's 400 square feet.
That's what you got.
Roughly, I mean, so what do you know, if here's 83 square feet, it's not that big. If you look in this room, if you were to measure 20 by 20 or 20 by 20, you're probably somewhere like this, if you were to square this off. It's really not that big of an area.
So in the picture that we saw at the architect's print, there are two pictures, one in the front and one in the back. I don't think we can afford a 32 picture.
Have you noticed in your yard now, if there's a torrential rain, do you get
No,
any water in your yard?
That one goes to the neighbor.
no, we don't.
Is it down
We don't see
here?
any pooling of water anywhere near our property.
You good?
Yeah, but I know, like, in flat areas, my own backyard, when there's a huge rain, you probably get a couple inches of water just sitting there, but we're flat, so we're not getting into the
So,
neighborhood.
even though our property does slope, the front of the home, so that white portion next to the black asphalt rectangle, that does slope, but the asphalt is actually level. So that portion of the property is flat, where we would park cars, will be parked, as well as through our walkway into the front of the house. So just that grass area does slope. It sloped a lot more in the back, but we leveled that off with the retaining wall. But even with the level ground, the driveway and our walkway into the home, there's no pooling of water there.
Okay.
So my concern is twofold. One is, I think we have a slippery slope when it comes to the fencing. What's to stop the next homeowner from saying, okay, let me build a 6-foot fence and a 6-foot wall, and then throw a 6-foot fence over it and stay within the ordinance? So I see that as an issue. And granting relief on that concerns me. Our ordinances are there for a reason, and because the lot sizes on some of these properties are already maxed out by the builders that are building these new homes, we have people coming in for relief all the time. And each time, we start bouncing off the ordinance again. And I'm not feeling very comfortable with that. Secondly, when it comes to coverage, I agree with the mayor. The 20% is more than generous. To me, I'm getting very concerned with water management in this town. Only a few years ago, it became mandatory training for everybody on this board to learn about water management. And then we're taking what we learned and saying, well, we feel sorry for the homeowner because he's stuck and he can't do what he wants with his property, but in the meantime, we're screwing up water management in our town. So, this is what I think. I think at this particular, because of the fence being what it is, and the wall's already there, and this is just speaking personally, I'm okay with that for today. Something that I'd like to get together with our planner and mayor and discuss that in the future. As far as the coverage is concerned, that I'm not comfortable with, unfortunately. So then it becomes a want versus a need. And I look at your need of widening the driveway versus a want of having a patio in the backyard. And to me, I think there should be some give. And I think the give would have to be more than likely with the patio. So I don't know if you're willing to shrink the patio down. I'm not overly crazy about the 20%, but I'll go along with the mayor's recommendation on that. So if
I'm
you
not
would-
saying I'm okay with the 20%, I'm saying for me, that's my personal
Right.
limit,
Mhm.
if there's just cause.
So, again, going back to wants versus needs, I'd like to hear from you what your wants versus needs are. If it was a choice between widening your driveway or getting the patio,
I'm gonna leave that up to her.
Happy New Year.
and I'm sorry for putting you in the spot, but unfortunately, this is what these builders are doing, and it's getting dumped back on us. And I hear it every month after month, and again, our heart goes out
Oh, yeah.
to our homeowners. You're my neighbor. But in the same token, the people that live next to you, they're my neighbor too.
And we love the fact that you're improving your property. We do. But we have to be concerned about the people down the block.
So if there were a choice between widening your driveway so you can get the cars side by side as opposed to in tandem versus a deck in the backyard, so you have a place to put your grill, I'd be curious to hear what your choice would be. And this is just one person's opinion. There's other people here that have votes.
Yeah, it's a hard decision, but I think for us to widen the driveway, it only makes sense to do it if we can fit, two cars side by side.
Which you would.
Right. I know that Tom mentioned the 2 feet setback. So if we were to do the 2 feet setback, then it would come out to 42.
Well, you just shift, yeah, but he's allowing it 2 feet on the other side, so you're just shifting it over. So you take, so in other words, instead of being directly up against your neighbor, you're going 2 feet over, but then where it ended, you're going 2 feet more. Am I right, Tom?
The idea was to maintain the functional 18.5-foot width. And move
Which
it
otherwise it doesn't make sense.
So it works.
Mhm. So, we want you to be able to go side by side with your car, but we also don't want you to be too close to your neighbor with asphalt.
Mr. Chairman, can I make a suggestion?
Always.
The suggestion is put a small Coltech unit, which is a half-moon plastic subsurface drainage pit in, and they're probably, in this case, 2 feet high, wide, probably 8 foot long, and you set them in stone. It's basically a horizontal seepage pit. If you put a small unit in the backyard, drain the patio to that, you've taken that water and put it in the ground.
You're gonna say it's another form of, it's a different driveway system, is what it is.
Yeah, it's a horizontal drywall.
Easy to work with.
Yeah.
The depth of the property, we could use
You could-
plastic chambers.
Yeah, you could use your river rock on the side,
Or,
collect the water, pipe it into your Coltech.
you know what I could do is if this would, if this would help out, I could run a service pipe adjacent to that section of the driveway, to the 2 foot area of the driveway.
I'm more concerned about the patio.
Yeah, so I could just
put a piece of Coltech in there, in stone, provide for the water to get into the system. That way the water from the patio is underground. I don't think it's all that expensive. You have a backhoe? If not, your cousin's got one, all right? And you could do an easy installation. It relieves our concerns about drainage, excessive drainage flowing to other people's.
The only thing is it doesn't alleviate the concern that I have of going over that 20%.
Yeah, well, the
I mean, it's
reason
marginal, but-
you're going over the 20%, and that's because of the surface drainage. You're taking a good part of that. You're taking almost 380 square feet. You're putting it underground. So you're eliminating the.
The reason that this is happening is that the builders are maxing out these homes and then leaving it up to homeowners to come up here and try to get more, and try to get what should have been there to begin with. That's the real problem.
Yeah, but now we got to solve the problem.
Okay, and I agree. And if the board is willing to go along with what you have to say, but you're fixed for this, I would probably be in favor of that as well.
And, you know, we do have builders that are doing this, and it's not unreasonable for people to be able to park two cars next to each other.
Not at all.
And have some sort of patio.
And
Because I'm in a home that's in a very similar situation. That it's, you know, not that it's terrible hardship, but it's, you know, it's something that we should be reasonably expected to have as some sort of outdoor sitting area. And I'm not.
I wouldn't mind
Averse to
seeing,
being-
honestly, I wouldn't mind seeing the ordinance changed to require it side by side in the future, especially on a house that's how many square feet? Yeah, I mean, 3,500 square foot house, and you got a one-car driveway. And again, it's the builder not taking responsibility for what he should be doing.
Right. I think we definitely have to be looking at how these new houses are being allowed to be doing that and leaving a 2-foot patio in the
That's
backyard.
exactly what I said. That's exactly my point.
That's something
All
I
right,
think needs to
at
be
this point, anybody else from the board before I go to the public?
Bless you.
God bless you. Motion to open the public?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstained? I'm going to go to the first row. Does anybody have anything to say? Second row, anybody have any questions, anything? I don't see any other rows occupied. Motion to close the public?
So moved.
Second. Okay, Tom?
It seems like the board has a good handle on the issues and possibly some conditions they want to impose here. I think the justification for the fence variance is that the walls are there, they're a replacement of previously existing walls. The walls themselves are conforming. The property does have a pretty substantial slope. And the fence on the one side is needed. So they're technically over what's permitted anyway. In terms of the impervious coverage, it's needed for the driveway to be functional in terms of the 2-car driveway. I think they're agreeable to maintaining the required 2-foot setback, so there's a benefit there. And I guess if there's any other way to alleviate surface runoff, that would also be a benefit.
You folks should be in agreement to that fix that Mr. Merman suggested?
We're open to that, thank you very much.
I see affirmative for your builder in the back. Anybody else on the board?
So you're also agreeable to moving the driveway 2 feet to the west?
Yes, sir. Open to that as well.
Just a point of clarification, just on this smaller wall that you had the concern with, Mr. Chairman. Is there any way that we can put in to relieve your concern that this was allowed because this was a pre-existing needed retaining wall? It's not a cosmetic wall, it's needed because of the slope, that they had to put this in for drainage safety purposes, and we're allowing it because it was there to
So it doesn't become a
prevent
future
someone from
preference.
putting that 6 foot and saying, now I want to go over it. You know, this is something that was needed,
That's
was
an
approved.
Excellent point, Ryan. Yeah.
For a motion?
Put that as part of, I guess, part of the discussion.
Just a point of clarification of why we allowed it.
Mm-hmm.
This will be part of the board's factual findings in connection with this application.
Okay.
But before you have a motion or a second, I'm not sure I got them all conditions correctly, so.
Yeah, go ahead, read them off.
Can I,
Let's read them off. Based on the comment by Tom, the applicant is to maintain a minimum of 2 feet to the property lines. Is that correct?
For the driveway.
For the drive.
the driveway, the driveway east side, east side of driveway pavement.
Just
Two.
the east side?
Yes.
Yes. The east edge of the driveway to the property line.
And the understanding is that this is to maintain the drainage. So any alteration of that drainage would be,
Well,
would invalidate
I
the,
believe the applicant proposed in that 2 feet to put a, we call it a river rock collector.
Well, I have some other conditions.
Oh, yeah, I got about 3 of them here.
Maybe you can help me clarify. This, there will be some review by the borough engineer with regard to the seepage pits and whether or
And
not
water
they're whether or not they're adequate. That's going to be at the discretion of the borough engineer.
And if he makes further requirements, you'll have to abide by it.
That's condition number 4.
Okay.
So let's get to number 3 first. A river stone is to be placed between the driveway.
They call it a river stone collector.
River stone, well, let me write that down. River stone collector, between what?
Between the pavement, it's in that 2-foot strip.
Okay,
Okay.
got that.
and the
And
retaining
then-
wall, because you said the retaining wall goes all the way to the sidewalk, right?
Yeah,
And, all right.
and for clarification, so you have the retaining wall, it's at the face of the retaining wall on the property line. You have, say the wall comes back, I forgot what it is, what block we use, 12 or 18 inches, then you want the 2-foot strip, right?
Yes, the
Well, it's
2
from the
foot,
Property line or 2
2
feet?
foot, 2 foot from the edge of pavement. East side pavement, a 2-foot river rock collector strip.
Okay, so you're.
Now, if there's a wall after that, that's,
Okay.
Let's go to condition number 4. If there are any issues related to drainage, subject to again review and approval by the borough engineer. If necessary, deemed necessary by the borough engineer, the applicant will install an additional seepage pit.
no,
At the sides to be determined?
no.
No?
Oh, can you go down there?
I have yours as in terms of the Coltex system.
Oh, you have that?
Yes,
Okay.
so you want to strike out that one?
No,
Because we
Yeah,
typically put
the
in
only-
there, it's subject to review and approval
my,
by the borough engineer.
my understanding of drainage improvements is the river rock collector next to the driveway,
Okay,
and an additional Coltech seepage pit in the backyard for the patio,
I have those two.
and that will have a similar river rock perimeter collector to hook into the Coltech. Okay?
And I think
The river rock acts as a catch basin, so to speak.
And I think the wording,
And then,
subject to review of the borough engineer, and if he requires further water management, it'll be taken care of.
correct. And,
Okay, so I also have your suggestion, Mr. Merman. The applicant will install a small Coltech unit, and that will drain
the patio,
patio.
correct.
Okay? And then I also added this, I think plans should be submitted incorporating the board's comments, either to the board or to the building department. It typically comes back to the board.
Can you repeat that one?
Typically, when revisions are made on the record,
Right,
we get some form of a plan submitted.
right,
So we don't really have a plan here. We have, I think it was a survey that was written on.
right.
So does the board want the applicant should really be required to submit plans, whether it's to the board or to the building department, incorporating all the changes?
Let them submit whatever engineering documents with sketches they need to the borough engineer to review, because it's all gonna be on drainage.
Is it adequate for me to amend the drawing that's there?
Satisfy the borough engineer.
Okay.
And planner.
We'll review whatever wise plan.
And the driveway will be removed 2 feet to the west, correct?
Correct.
That's all I have.
And the maximum curb cut, existing or new, will not exceed 18.5 feet.
No,
Drop curb.
the drop curb, I thought he said it was gonna
Is
stay
it-
the same.
It is gonna say, I just wanna
In
make,
case they change it, I think it's good that we
All
have
right,
it in
so
there.
what?
But the
you
actual
want us to-
spot where they are has to shift over.
yeah.
Right.
The drop curb will what?
The maximum drop curb will not exceed 18.5 feet.
Okay.
If they're moving it, they might as well have it so they can put the two cars in instead of having to go like this to go in.
Okay.
Can you, because I think Ms., I think Anna didn't want, she wasn't sure if she wanted we have the option to make it, to change, modify the curve to 18.5 feet?
You
She
do.
did not want to do
Drop.
that.
Not true.
You have that option.
You can go to
Not
8,
8 feet, okay.
you can go to 18.5 feet.
If she wants to, or else she can.
Mhm. Or leave it the way it is.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Now, if we're gonna have this river stone, that means at least on the east side, there's no Belgian block curbs or anything. You understand that?
Correct.
Okay. I want your client to understand that also. All right. There's no curbing, no curbs on your driveway,
The water can flow.
so the water can flow. Okay. You saved an engineering drawing and we just did it for you.
Okay.
And
Excellent suggestions from everybody. At this point, I'm willing to accept the motion.
The motion has basically been made.
Well, I need it
That the
official.
whole, that the, what was,
Made it official.
all right, I'll make a motion that whatever we said is the motion. Basically, the motion will
For
include, from a drainage standpoint, a 2-foot river stone collector on the east side of the driveway. And the driveway asphalt will be moved sufficiently to include that 2 foot. The proposed patio drainage in the rear yard will consist of a Coltech subsurface system, and that water will be collected by a River Rock patio perimeter collector. Bless you.
I think you could probably just say, subject to what she has.
Okay.
Subject to all the conditions.
Approval, subject to what's been drafted
And
by our
that the
attorney.
borough engineer will be
Yep, it's in there.
Just,
reviewed, make field inspections, whatever he needs.
Do I have a second?
Before we
Second.
do that, to the applicants, do you understand and accept the conditions? Now, understand that these are some of the conditions, but not all. There are other standard conditions that are imposed, you'll see that in the resolution of approval, assuming the motion carries.
For the rendering, can I amend that rendering for them?
Whatever the borough engineer
Whatever the
requires.
borough engineer wants.
All right, so
He's pretty easy to work with.
Thank you.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Russo. This chart. Okay. Mayor-elect Papaleo?
Yes.
Sheriff Killian?
Yes.
Ms. Boland?
I'm afraid I'm going to say no because of the fence wall combination, the height of the fence wall combination.
Mr. Merman?
Yes.
Mr. Grasso?
Yes.
And Mr. Gibbons?
Yes.
Okay, congratulations, folks.
Thank you so much. Thank you to the board. Thank you.
I hope you understand there were a lot of give and takes here with
I can appreciate that, yeah. Thank you so much.
All the best in the future.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Okay. Next one up is Sunday Sushi LLC. They're looking for site plan approval, which is required by the Borough of River Edge for a food license. Block 614, Lot 8.02, 651 Beck Road, River Edge, New Jersey. Representing his client is... Good evening, Mr. Barrett.
Members of the board. You have, the floor kind of, you do them out now?
Yeah.
Or when you're up to back?
Go ahead, give 'em up.
This is floor plan.
Thank you.
You got more?
As we're reviewing these plans, I'm just gonna, as Mr. Barrett is well aware, that if, sometimes when an applicant comes in, especially for a property like this with different kinds of uses, we make sure that the landlord is in compliance with everything that he's agreed to in the past. And he may be required to do a few things in the future to make the property more up to date. So that would be something that you and the landlord would have to work out between, if we made it a condition of the approval. I'd like to first say that the landlord has been very good at taking our suggestions. There was one thing you and I discussed on the phone.
I went by there today. There's actually nothing wrong with that portion of the fence.
Except that it's old and it doesn't match the other one.
Oh, right. I mean, that's the only, it's not,
Yeah.
not a decrepit.
No. They did a beautiful job, and I'm sure the neighbors are very appreciative of what was done there. It's just kind of odd for another 30 feet.
Mhm.
So you
I
could
think,
pass that on.
I think we can do something.
The clothing bins are gone. I'm very happy about that, and certainly the site has been cleaned up. So go ahead.
All right, so at this point, as I said, I would like to open up a Korean Japanese restaurant, so I think we bring him in, and now it's exactly what he wants to do with that.
Sounds like a plan.
Good evening. You swear from the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You state your full name for the record.
Tanvir Hassan,
How do you spell your first name, sir?
Tanveer.
And your last name is?
Hassan, Hassan.
Thank you.
All right, so you currently operate a sushi restaurant, is that correct?
Yes, in Emerson.
And what is it that you want to do in this location?
In this location, I'm trying to bring a sushi restaurant plus a Korean restaurant, basically Japanese cuisine with Korean cuisine.
And how do you accomplish that?
So we'll have a Japanese restaurant, sushi, sashimi, udon, teriyaki, and all that stuff. That takes care of the Japanese side, and then have a Korean barbecue and hot pot to cover the Korean part of it.
And you had the opportunity to, your architect is going to specify later, and rather than, as was stated in the application, 85 seats, it looks like it's going to be about 71 seats.
It's going to be about 71 seats.
So it'll be less intense than the original. Your hours of operation, I understand, will be Monday to Thursday from 10:30 to 10:30?
And then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, till 11 o'clock.
And when do you get the deliveries at the
So our deliveries are between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m.
And typically what kind of a truck are you in, a box truck?
It's like one of those small trucks,
It's not tractor trailer?
not a tractor trailer.
Okay. And then as far as lunches, I mean, do you anticipate doing much lunches, or is it primarily?
Primarily at evening dinner service, mostly.
And then the other uses in the mall. Well, for instance, your neighbor, Istanbul Blue. You know what their hours are?
I think they're 4 p.m. to 11 p.m. They're not serving lunch.
They've changed their hours of
They've changed
operation.
their hours of operation.
Since you started negotiating with Ms. Freeman. And then as far as the other, the cleaners and the nail salon, basically, from your observation, they appear to close around 6 o'clock, except for maybe one night a week that they stay open?
Yes, I think so.
So that, for the most part, your primary use of the parking area will occur when the other stores are closed, and the neighbor, the restaurant was the pizzeria, which is limited to takeout. And they don't have any seats in that location. The board will be there.
We do.
I can state that I had a conversation with a landlord today about the empty space, the other empty space. He's continuing to negotiate with Dollar Tree, but as yet there's no agreement. And in fact, I mentioned to my client, and I think to Tom as well, he advertises that space every week in the record. I don't know if anybody else sees it. I happen to look at the real estate section on Sundays, and he's still advertising, so he doesn't have a tenant yet. But he certainly doesn't feel, based on our conversations, that there's going to be any conflict in terms of parking or so.
Okay. I mean, if you had a Dollar Tree in there and a restaurant in there, and they're open at the same times, I think that would create somewhat of a conflict, but because they'd be open at the same times,
Well, right,
the
but-
Dollar Tree is not gonna close at 6 o'clock at night.
No, but I think their primary business will occur at a different, other than maybe this time of year, when, the holidays, people start more often.
It sounds like it's a moot point, because we don't know if they're coming in or not,
Right.
so.
We don't know.
We have a open, was it 12,000 square feet?
That's available, I think it's 13,000.
13,000 square foot
13,500.
spot. So the board will have to take that into consideration for parking as general retail, which that's what that mall is zoned for. And we'll just move from there. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No problem. So that's basically what Mr. Hassan would like to do there. What is any questions? We have our engineer, we can come up. The architect next and then the engineer. And then we'll be able to address Mr. Cox's comments as well.
Do we open to the public for this witness?
Yes.
So motion open to the public for this witness?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstained? Anybody wish to speak?
I've just got 2 follow-up questions. Do you intend to keep any commercial vehicles on site?
No.
Okay. And the other thing, or will you ever host any special events or parties that of any sort?
A motion to close the public?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstained? Yeah, I should have asked the board if they wanted to ask any questions first. Once we get the
You have an architect.
Yeah, so let's get him up here, and
Right.
then we can
That's
ask
why-
both of them at the same time.
Okay.
Everybody's okay with that?
Yep.
Good evening. Swear affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes, I do.
Please state your full name for the record.
Andrew Feathers, F-E-T-H-E-S, 613 Orville Avenue, Orville, New Jersey.
Thank you, and you are the project architect, correct?
That's correct.
Counselor?
Please give the background, please.
Yes, so I'm a licensed architect in New Jersey, New York, and Connecticut. I've been in practice working for other architects and myself since 1991. I don't know the math, 30 years, 20-something years. I've designed dozens of restaurants and commercial spaces. I've appeared before almost every board in New Jersey, including this board, at times throughout my career.
Sounds good to me.
Sounds good.
Discussion with an expert.
I would say so.
So,
Welcome.
let's tell us how you came up with the floor plan which the board has in front of them.
Okay, I'm gonna move this a little bit here so the board can see it. So what I have prepared is a floor plan drawing. It's number P-01, dated 4 December 2019. And what it represents is floor plan of the existing space and the proposed layout for the restaurant. You can just note that the board will mark that A1.
Certainly.
So, generally speaking.
You know what, just, let's wait for the church to finish telling us what time it is.
Divine intervention in my presentation here, so take every little bit I can get. Good thing we're not doing this, it's not one of those late nights where you have to all summer at 1.
I think it goes off at 9 o'clock. Okay, go ahead, continue now.
Okay, thank you. Just repeating, we've obviously taken the existing floor plan of the space at 651 Kinderknapp Road, which is the northernmost space on the strip mall. It's approximately 1,760 square feet of floor space. We've divided it sort of into somewhat of a traditional restaurant with seating and dining area sort of in the front of the store, which is to the east, kitchen, back of house to the west, the back. Approximately 1,250 square feet of dining area and about 510 square feet of kitchen and back of house area. The space is divided, the dining space is divided into sort of mixed seating. Along the south side of the space is banquet seating with tables and chairs against that. On the east side, which is the storefront, the glass storefront, but also banquet seating with tables and chairs. In the middle of the space is just tables and chairs, and on the northern side, adjacent to kind of a reception entry welcome area, is the sushi bar. There are a variety of seats and tables. I can give you the breakdown if you'd like, or basically summarize that there are 64 seats at tables and chairs and banquet. There are 7 seats at the sushi bar. The back half of the restaurant is mostly kitchen and service area. The northwest corner is kitchen, dishwashing, those kinds of functions, as well as a serving counter for servers to pick up meals and deliver them to the tables. In the southwest corner, there's also 2 bathrooms. The entry to the restaurant is to be moved from its current position, which is more in the center of the space. By way of background, this at one point was 2 separate tenancies. At some point, the landlord had taken out the demising wall and created 1 tenant space for the card store. The entryway is to move to the north side of the storefront, where there's a small sort of vestibule, reception area, and then seating. And then in the back of the building, in the back of the space, I should say, there is some existing fenestration, windows and doors, which will be sealed, and the service entrance and the secondary means of egress is moving southward in the space. I think that's all I have to say.
So one question about that back door you just mentioned, is that an emergency exit, or is that easily in and out for anyone? Is that an open door?
At this point, we're looking at it more as an emergency exit, secondary service entryway for bringing supplies, materials in. I think from a control point of view, most of the diners will be received. It's a reservation type restaurant, so people won't be sort of wandering in from the back.
So no one's parking in the back and coming in that way?
It's not
the intent.
planned that way, yes.
Mr. Behrens?
I don't have much for the architect, just looking at the floor plan, there's sufficient space, I guess, for people waiting, given that it's a reservation. You're the expert, obviously.
Yes.
I really don't have many questions, not for the architect.
Ms. Boland?
No, I'm good.
Mr. Gibbons?
I don't think so, no. Not besides that door.
Mr. Merman?
Talk to me about your cooking. Are you going to have deep fries or fryers or hoods or Ansel systems or what?
I probably would refer to my client on some of those specific issues.
So basically, this, the Japanese cuisine section is gonna take place inside the kitchen, and the Korean barbecue that I was talking about would be on the table.
Okay.
Pretty much, we have the grill right in the center of the table, and we have, the fire suppression system on each table, and, exhaust. in the basement.
Fire suppression system
Or
and
the
the,
barbecue grills that are on the table. So that's
Okay.
where we're doing the cooking. So this is like a table side cooking, and pretty much that's all there is on the dining area. Everything else comes out of the kitchen.
kitchen-wise, you have hoods in the kitchen?
So there's a 20-foot hood, and we will have, ranges, a couple of
Mhm.
deep fryers, flat top, and we have a volcanic rock grill as well inside,
Mhm.
and possibly a wok system,
And that'll be Ansel?
everything.
He's shaking his head yes. Let the records show you. What are you exhausting to? Your hoods?
The hoods will go to a rooftop exhaust, traffic fan, grease filters on all the hoods. The size of that hood will most likely require makeup air,
Mhm.
its length.
It would have to do with that.
What are you doing for odors, exhaust odors?
So, at the top of the exhaust, there will be a filtration system,
There'll be what?
a filtration system, a filter.
Okay,
To prevent the odors, the barbecue smells, or whatnot, cooking smells from coming out.
okay. What's the general frequency of changing those filters?
Probably once or twice a month.
Okay.
It depends on, how busy we are, actually.
Right, I understand, okay. So they're not charcoal? Are they charcoal, or they're just some kind of a disposable filter?
That I'm not sure of.
Okay. But you do have an odor suppression system, okay.
So keeping in mind that you're backing up to a residential zone.
Yeah, no, that was the main purpose. So basically, we have these grease filters, they'll take care of the grease and all that stuff.
Mhm.
And then the secondary filter, right at the top of the exhaust, that will take care of the odors.
Okay.
I'd just like to ask the architect, are you familiar with filtration systems at all for this kind of restaurant?
I am, yes.
Okay, so would you say that the system that your client is planning on installing is considered one of the best?
Yes, I would.
Okay.
The latest technology, correct.
Then, coming from the professional, I'm good with that. Okay.
Okay. Seating, you're talking 71 seats, I see, according to your breakdown on the drawing?
That's correct.
Okay. Let's look at the parking requirements for that seating.
You know, let's get to the engineer on that.
Oh, you got an engineer, I didn't
Yeah.
realize that, okay, fine.
Let me,
Now, who do
Let's
we,
just keep it right now where we are inside.
all right, let's talk about signage, is the architect,
I submitted,
let's talk about the signage,
okay,
okay? Is this the gentleman?
I submitted the proposal.
All right,
What do you
okay.
want now?
You,
It's easier. Tell me what you want to know, and we'll try.
and you'll agree, okay.
Well, we'll try to-
You have an existing sign box.
Correct.
The sign that you're proposing is going to be installed within that existing sign box, correct?
Correct.
That's what I want to hear. Okay, and you're offering as a suggestion the sign that you submitted, which will now fit within that sign box.
Correct.
The lighting for the sign,
LED
interior?
interior.
Oh, okay. No goosenecks or anything, okay. So it'll conform with the rest of the comprehensive signage, okay. Why, your bathrooms don't look like they're handicapped. Is that a false reading, or you have a reason?
False reading, I wouldn't say that it was intentionally false. Obviously, I'm not here to misrepresent anything. We just didn't show the grab bars and the
Okay.
radius circle. We thought that might be somewhat confusing to some.
They wouldn't get a CO without that anyway.
Right, those are building department items that we would have to, building code items that we would have to comply with just to get
So-
approval.
Your proposed bathrooms are handicap accessible?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, so I need to know. I still want to talk about the seating and the parking, but I guess that's the
We'll get to
end
that
of
with the engineer.
Okay.
Mayor?
Right now, that's
So,
it.
the way you currently have the access or the entry to the men's toilet and the women's toilet, the door opens into the hallway.
Correct.
Doesn't that obstruct the hallway?
The doors they swing in the direction of travel, so there are obstructions to the hallway. The building code allows you to be able to, if the door was open at any moment, to push it in order to get out. It's a conflict that we face all the time with any facility, that we can't open the door into an ADA restroom. In the event that someone was to fall off of their chair and be obstructing the door, you couldn't physically get in. So the door always has to open out. They're opening in a way that in the direction of travel, which is towards the back of the store, they can be closed shut in that situation.
Interesting, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't know, because, I'm in a school and we have ADA bathrooms and they open in. So if someone's traveling from the dining area to the bathroom and the door opens suddenly, they get smacked by the door, but you're saying that's required by law.
It is, yes.
That's what I was concerned about.
Put a traffic light there.
You, one further question. I see the stairs to the basement. What is the basic function?
Basement function is storage, walk-in boxes, employee locker, some food prep area, and a small office, a small business office. All functions that are ancillary to running a restaurant.
I don't know what Mr. Costa's comments are, but I imagine he addresses grease traps and all that.
He has that all in his
That's
report.
what I said, I imagine.
And this will be incorporated on any approval.
I had just a further question, because I didn't realize that we were doing food, that there's food prep at every table, or the
barbecue.
The barbecue will be happening at all these tables?
On these tables, yeah.
So there'll be a flat top on these tables, or something that's removable?
Bulk heavy garage grill.
And is that removable, or does that stay on the table, or?
It stays on the table.
Okay. So is there enough room in between these for that chef or whoever's preparing that food to be next to these other tables, and there's enough room for this to be all happening?
Yes, there is. I'd also point out, just to clarify, there's 4 tables in the center that are marked as two-person tables.
Mm-hmm.
Those are just standard tables, so they don't have grills in them.
So the ones that are separated, so the six, and the ones along the wall, all would be having this barbecue prepared at the table?
That's right.
Okay. And is this consistent with what you have in Emerson in terms of size?
The restaurant is just a Japanese restaurant serving sushi and sashimi. No barbecue.
So this would be a bigger operation than we have.
Bigger operation, correct.
Okay. And just one other question on the bathrooms. Is this sufficient for 71 seats?
Yes, it is.
So that's acceptable, having one toilet per
That's correct.
bath?
Mayor? 2 more questions, if I can. Well, in many restaurants, they create mood lighting, which is totally acceptable. Is there any, I would hope there'd be some sort of expectation that the hall leading to the bathrooms would be well lit. Is that something that we can require?
I think that the building department
See to that?
will see to that as far as any compliance issues.
I tend to think it's a code issue. There
Yeah.
has to be just some
Same
level
thing
of-
with the size of the bathrooms.
Right.
That's all going to the building code.
And so my other question, and maybe this also goes to building code, in public schools, we're basically designating all the bathrooms as single-use bathrooms, and so therefore no longer being designated as men and women. That way, it creates a better flow. I don't know if that's Is it men's and women's because that's what you've always done, or is that because there's a code?
Probably, to be very honest, just, it sort of ended up on the plans from it sort of being there for many, many years. Clearly, the trend now is to go to either unisex or non-gender bathrooms, and I would imagine this would be the case.
So they would be labeled
So,
simply
yeah,
as
they
that.
wouldn't be labeled specifically men's and women's.
Thank you.
Your side, sir.
Going back to what Tom was speaking of before, I'm trying to remember, but going into many restaurants, correct me if I'm wrong, but is it customary where doors open in on bathrooms in a lot of restaurants? I'm just trying to think of the last ones that I went to.
Yeah, it's a function of the size of the handicap bathroom.
So if you have enough square footage, you could have the door go in. If it's tight, it has to go out.
Correct, right.
Because I just, just as Tom said, I see a potential problem if somebody, I don't know, if it's anything not too off the wall, but the way people drive around here and the way their attitude is, if someone's in a hurry and they come out of the men's room and they fly the door open and somebody's walking down the hallway, the door and the person's head are going to connect. And
I'm just going to throw this out there. Whatever our building code requires on interior is really going to be what ultimately judges us. The board really doesn't have a lot of jurisdiction on interior
But I would
buildings.
add, though, that it would be our preference to open the doors into the bathroom for certain. We would make every effort possible within the realm of the space that we have available and the size of the rooms that are available to do that if the building code will allow it.
so it's not so much the square feet. I mean, somehow of the bathroom, I'm just throwing this out, but if possibly the toilet and the sink were on the same wall, then you might have the ability to make the door swing in.
The answer is yes. I mean, I don't want to go into a whole dissertation on ADA design for bathrooms. I'm happy to if you'd like to. There are limits placed on how close other fixture can be to that bathroom, so a person in a wheelchair can go up to the commode and be able to manipulate moving the chair out of the way as they shift their body onto the toilet. So typically, we need to be somewhere about 5 feet either side of the toilet.
I think it's safe to say that you'll stipulate whatever the code requires, you'll comply.
We'll comply, and again, I would even go that step further and say, if the doors can be remade, reoriented to swing inward, we will make every possible effort to do that.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
I would think for his benefit, safety-wise, it probably is a much better choice. But at the end of the day, whatever is required by the borough is what you're going to have to do.
These doors would also have closers on them. Typically, we would never leave a bathroom door in a typical restaurant that doesn't have a closer, might stay open, right? These, we would never want that to be the case. So there would be a closer on it that has a little bit of push to it, so you can never like really swing the door open like in a panic. You have to really push it out.
Ms. Boland?
No comment.
Okay. Did you want to wait until we get the engineer up? Because that's with a little more within our purview. Bring him up. Oh, wait, let's open to the public real quick for this witness. Open to the public.
Make a motion?
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed, any abstained? Anybody in the public wish to speak on this? Okay. Close to the public?
Motion?
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstained? Okay. Bring your next witness there, Counselor.
The testimony you're about to give will be the truth, and that's the truth. Please state your full name for the record.
It's Sean McClellan, last name spelled M-C-C-L-E-L-L-A-N. I graduated from NJIT in 1997 with a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering with a Bachelor in Engineering in the state of New Jersey since 2004. Testified at various boards in Burgundy, Lawrence, Essex, and Passaic County. I've been running sports.
Been advised by our attorney that she gives you a 2 thumbs up. I believe that would be sufficient for the board, correct?
Correct.
Weren't you in Hillsdale Tuesday night?
Now I'm feeling under pressure. No, a couple of years ago. Maybe
Couple years ago, okay.
yesterday.
Fire away.
All right. So as has already been said, we're proposing a sushi restaurant. The square footage of the restaurant is 1,660 square feet. The total building is 21,537 square feet, and on site there is 105 parking spaces. As far as the impervious coverage, it's basically 100%. What we're proposing to do as far as improvements to the property is very little. As the architect testified to, we are looking to relocate a door, and we're also going to put a small trash enclosure with the property. At the north end there.
Just on that, you'll stipulate that whatever our borough engineer requires as far as an enclosure, self-enclosing and so forth, that you'll comply?
Yeah, he asked us to put some bollards there, and we will comply with that.
Very good. Continue.
Pretty much all I have. There's going to be a lot of questions, so I figure we can go right to that.
Okay. So, Tom?
So, from a planning standpoint, we're here for two reasons, as the board knows. For every food handler's license, that automatically triggers a site plan application. That's one aspect of it, and also because of the parking on the site. The developed site has has 6 different spaces. One, as you've heard, is occupied by that larger vacant space of 13,510 square feet. There's the La Toscana Pizzeria, which has no seating. The Bloomy Nail Salon, River Edge Cleaners, Istanbul, which I've estimated at approximately 60 seats, and now the proposed restaurant of modified from 85 to 71 seats. So in calculating the estimated parking need, we've heard that there's 105 spaces available, including, I think, 2 handicap spaces. I've estimated a range of a requirement, and I say range because of the La Toscana space. On the one hand, you could technically call it a fast food restaurant. I understand it's a pizzeria, but it could technically fall under that purview. However, when they were here and they took over for the Carousel convenience store, I'm not sure that we applied that standard. I don't recall specifically. So, however, this is a new application. We consider everything in its totality.
I think when we made that approval, we made it based on it was a strictly takeout.
Takeout.
Yeah.
Correct.
So
There
it
were no
wouldn't fall
seats,
under
so-
that.
Correct, so it was not fast food
Correct.
per se.
Yeah,
So-
it definitely didn't fall under that.
So based on that standard, then, there is no range. The
Mhm.
number that I've calculated is approximately 154 spaces required. And again, that's based on the estimated 60 seats at Istanbul. And the remainder of the spaces would be considered retail.
So 154 is what's required, and what do they have?
105 is what,
So that would be a 48,
49.
49 parking deficiency. Okay.
So the total variance is 49 for the whole site?
Mhm.
So it was, okay.
And I do know that there's some question as to whether this property falls under the strip mall versus,
Shopping center versus the different.
right, and our ordinance is different for shopping center, is that correct?
Again, a point that isn't really clear, but I believe our office has made a determination that it technically does not, or at least part of it does not fall under that. And the reason is because the term shopping center is only defined in the sign ordinance section of the ordinance. And I have it singled out because I had a feeling this might come up. So it defines a shopping center is hereby defined to mean and include any concentration of over 2 retail stores and service establishments under one property ownership or management, having common off-street parking facilities, off-street sidewalks, or pedestrian walkways, and ingress from and egress to a public street. So, on the one hand, the site does have all that. Based on common planning definitions, and I have one from noted planning guru Harvey Moskowitz, which I'm Let's see your sign. Basically talking.
You know what, Tom, let me make it
Anyway.
easy.
Anyway, it's been our. it's
Would
our
it be
determination.
would it be prudent to say that we could weigh that if we were to give this variance, we could weigh the fact that if it was a considered a strip mall or shopping center, that they would fall within the realm of,
The board has that discretion
Yeah.
to consider the site in its totality, so, and the mix of uses, so, yeah.
and again, it's obvious that the town has parking deficiencies just about everywhere, is that correct?
It's a developed site, it's been
Mhm.
developed for decades.
All right, did you have anything else you wanted to add, Tom?
The only issue that I see is the parking, if it's an issue.
Mhm. All right, in Mr. Costa's report, he's got the sewers need to be TV'd, the normal stuff that you need to do for a restaurant. We're going to incorporate his review letter into the...
I did have a conversation with the landlord this afternoon, and just so the board understands, there are 3 separate sewer lines. The sewer line at the north end, actually each of the stores, the restaurant, Istanbul and the proposed, have their own sewer lines from the back of the store or the west side, and they join up in some kind of a junction box under the Bilko doors in front of Istanbul. Then they flow out to the street. There are 2 other separate lines that service the other stores. Both of these sewer lines were recently cleaned, but we have no problem with TVing them.
Well, whatever Mr. Costa
I
requires.
just wanted to point that out.
Mhm. And it's good to know that they've been cleaned.
It's a slightly different situation with the different
Mhm.
breakdowns.
We're going to incorporate his letter
Right.
into our approval, and whatever's in this letter, you have to, I'm sure you've read it already, so.
And one of his other comments was he wanted to know about employee parking. I spoke to my client, I wanted to know, who he anticipates as his employees. He said that at the Emerson location, there's a number of students or recent graduates from Riverdale, and he has a connection there with one of the counselors, providing employment for these students. And a lot of kids don't even drive yet, so they get dropped off. The chefs obviously will drive. The others, though, rely on public transportation or, somebody dropping them off. They're not going to add.
I will say, using Riverdale students, I believe that most of the board would applaud that, so thank you for that. I'd like to keep those kids working.
Yeah, we've been doing that for the last 4 or 5 years.
Well, thank you for that. Tom, anything else? Okay, so really, I think the only...
One question for Tom.
Yeah, sure.
Sure. 71 seats. If it was a standalone, what would be the number of required spaces?
29.
29?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Actually 28,
She
24, but I think we round up.
rounds down to 28.
All right.
Ryan?
We gave you the
So we're looking at this then as the overall project needs 150 spaces? Is that how we have to
That's
be
correct.
looking at this? Not necessarily the 28, because obviously there's well more than that. Do we have any idea of how much traffic is happening at Istanbul during the dinner hours? How many of these spots they're actually using?
I just drove through there on my way in, just to see the property one more time. It didn't appear to be more than 15 cars in the entire front parking area here. There were a couple in the back, which I would assume were employees, but it's not a great sample because the largest store is currently vacant, but it's also a Wednesday night, but it did not seem like that much was happening in the center.
I would like to just interject for a second. It would be prudent upon your client, not your client, but the landlord, to start being more enforceable on the parking. Yeah, the commuters are taking advantage of that lot, and I'm sure they're not River Edge commuters. Ever since they left, yes. So, the borough has an ordinance. you quote the ordinance in the sign, you put the sign up, and you send it to our truck center.
Right.
And it'll
Give them
stop.
a flyer and give
Mhm.
them change the pattern.
All right, so but that's besides the point.
I think,
So-
I think you probably have issues on an overall site problem with across the street as well.
Mhm.
I certainly see people crossing the street to go to other restaurants in town,
Correct. They don't have enough parking.
to be unnamed.
I'm sorry.
No, I think that's it for now.
Well, it's gonna be it, because he's our last witness. Mr. Merman?
We gotta go public?
Well,
I'm done.
I'm still
I'm done.
going around the
Thank you.
board.
I'm done.
Mayor? Good?
I'm good.
Now we'll open to the public. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstain? Anybody from the public wish to ask any questions at all? Okay. Motion to close to the public?
So moved.
The second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Tom, final comments?
Well, in terms of the one variance that I've calculated, there seems to be a few aspects that the board could evaluate if they wanted to grant the variance. On the one hand, the site is developed. This one space, if it was a retail space, would require 11 spaces. The restaurant bumps it up to 28 or 29, so you're looking at an increase of about 17 or 18 spaces, and I think the testimony from the applicant is that the site can accommodate that increase, so there are no perceived detriments from the applicant's perspective.
Anybody else from the board? Any last minute comments?
Just
I have-
one-
go ahead.
One quick item. Tom, I marked the Lantomi plan as A2 with today's date, Exhibit A2.
Tom, I would like to see that fence issue revisited, so it's completed, so it doesn't look piecemeal. Remind him that as part of our town, it's
We have to wait till the spring. because of the-
I'm okay with that as long as I have his word like he did last time.
No problem.
The enclosures, again, as Mr. Costa can require.
Well, and you spoke a little about that as well. And he suggested the green bucket thing.
Mm-hmm.
Big table set. So that's what we really well.
As long as it's self-closing and the tops on the dumpsters are self-closing, so we don't have seagulls hopping in and out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I just have one item. Mr. Costa did say that the, ADA parking spaces shall be provided. There are two. Because then he sent the,
Yeah.
information regarding restriping. So that being the,
Can I just stop you for a second before you go? Whatever is going to be required by code, it's going to have to be. If the code requires it,
here's the issue. The ADA information that he sent us says that if the parking lot is restriped, then you have to comply. So look up the definition of restriping, and that's to change the space markings in a parking lot. We don't tend to change any of the markings. The lines have been refreshed by painting. That's not restriping. Restriping would be to change the layout.
all right, so I'm going to throw the old, you're preaching to the choir. Whatever Mr. Costa requires is what's going to happen.
We'll have to battle him.
Mhm. Okay? That's why he makes the big bucks. And is in Florida tonight.
I'm sure.
So with that incorporated, his letter incorporated, I'll give you a copy, Counselor, if you don't have it.
Would it be appropriate to also put into the resolution an expectation that the filters be changed no less than once a month?
I think that's fair and good idea. We are in a heavy residential zone, we don't want them
And that would
house
be all
watering at 10
filters.
o'clock at night.
Yeah.
And the last thing I'm going to throw out too, with regard to signage, I don't want to see any neon signs or anything in the window. Whatever is code, Tom will take care of, but just venture carefully on your windows.
You want to make that a condition?
Well, no, whatever is allowable is allowable.
Okay.
Tom will make sure it's enforced. Okay, motion on this application.
Oh, I need to get my sheet.
Now a motion on this application.
Now a motion, all right. So I'll make a motion that the board grant food handler's license based on the site plan
Did you want to read
approval.
those conditions?
Yeah, they're not a lot.
You got them? No, all right.
Got 'em?
Which,
The applicant shall comply with the report of the board engineer. And that report, I believe, is dated December the 3rd of 2000. It says 18, it should say 19.
Mm-hmm.
And 9.
Streamline.
There is also a condition and comment by the chair and the rest of the board that the dumpster shall be self-closing and the bollards will be installed as required by Mr. Costa. And the third condition is that the filter shall be changed no less than once a month by the owner or operator.
And the new signage will fit the existing sign box.
I had that.
Yeah, okay.
Tom will follow up on that.
Yeah. What else was it? Well, we got the filters,
I
okay.
think we're good.
I think if it's possible with the bathrooms, even if it involves making the men's room slightly larger, to have the doors, to look into the idea of the doors swinging in.
Again, I believe that,
We're gonna
I'm
extend the
just going to
code.
say that's a code issue,
All right.
so they know that they have to follow the code,
So we're gonna try.
whatever it is, it is. If you want to take the recommendation of the mayor on unisex bathrooms, that's up to you. That's a code issue, it's not a board issue. So I have a motion. Do I need a second?
Second?
I have Mr. Gibbons, and a roll call, please.
Mayor-elect Papaleo?
Yes.
Sarah Killian?
Yes.
Ms. Boland?
Yes.
Mr. Merman?
Yes.
Mr. Rosso?
Yes.
Mr. Gibbons?
Yes. Congratulations, sir, and we wish you much luck. And I will just throw it out to you for our mayor. I'm sure that he would love to come and cut the ribbon if you notify our borough clerk when you're going to open. Right?
Mr. Barrett, while you're here.
One of the joyous things of being a mayor.
Mi-
Well,
Hold on.
I'll figure it. Don't worry. I gave it over to you, but if you want a copy, you can have it.
mi- Mr. Barrett. Mr. Barrett.
Yes.
Historical Society. Can you give us a status of that?
Okay. All right.
Mr. Chairman?
I'll say it in a second.
Tomorrow's the date, right? Tomorrow's the deadline date.
Yes.
It's December.
Here's our story.
It's in my diary,
Paul.
popped up.
Oh,
Works out of that office. I'm sorry?
Update. This is my question.
Okay.
State of New Jersey, DEP, is going to be preparing a parking agreement as you requested. However,
There's always a however.
talk about bureaucracy. It's absolutely absurd. However, we're working on it. I was promised a draft, hopefully by the end of the year.
okay.
Now, this has been going on for 3 months.
And,
Mr. Bezrelian?
yes.
Here's another one, I need a hammer. I know, you're saying it's gonna call us away. Well, you drafted it, he changed it, I did what he wanted, let's get the thing signed. Anyway, I know it's gonna happen, it's,
When it's going to happen. Okay.
so, and because of dealing with the state, I don't call him every day, I only call him once a week.
No, okay. So, bottom line, you need an extension.
Yes, we do.
Okay.
So to be on the safe side now, 60, I guess, is tomorrow the deadline?
60
Wanna
days?
make it-
60, 90, it's up to the board.
We can give you 90.
Yeah, that's fine.
Just start from, yeah.
And I'm sorry, where are you with the sanitary sewer easement agreement?
He just said that.
I was right, okay.
They're hammering it out.
We have an agreement,
I saw that.
and Mr. Vezralli suggested certain changes, so we made them.
Right.
One of which was that we're incorporating the plans by reference because the county would never be able to record them.
Right.
With these. So
Okay.
he agreed to that, and now when I call him, oh yeah, I better talk to my client.
Okay.
That's all I did.
Thank you.
Okay, folks, pleasure to meet you all.
Yeah,
Thank
good
you.
luck.
night.
Have a good holidays.
Good holidays, everyone.
I'm gonna go
That's it,
to,
and, once I have the parking agreement, I will certainly send it to Marlene,
Okay.
to review for comment.
I know the chairman of our subcommittee for the master plan has met with our planner and has a quick update for us, so we'll get that done. I know it's getting late, just bear with me. We'll have a light schedule the rest of the year, I can promise you that.
Which means you cancel,
That's exactly
the
why I
next,
said that.
which means you cancel the next meeting.
That's
Yeah,
correct.
okay. Tom and I had to sit down, November the 13th. Basically, what we did is we took the current update and, we went over it with the board information, the same elements that were in the current update have to, which is basically the format of the new one, so you gotta go through all of those. And we went through that as best we could. We did a quick markup. We also identified some additional information that we might need, basically on what has been accomplished in the last 10 years. And I referred him to Mr. Costa, probably the most knowledgeable in that. And what I'd like you to think about as individuals, let me just see what that was. Think of we've got a big title that basically states specific recommended master plan and/or development regulation changes. Basically, if the people could think about that, and when we get to the point where we're reviewing it, if you, or even at any point you want, I guess, give us what you're thinking.
I think it would be prudent for the board to have a work session
We
separate from the
we probably
regular session
will.
in January.
Tom is still working on it. He says probably next week. I might get a quick copy.
Subject to any other recommendations.
Yeah, and it's maybe we can get that to the point where we can give the board a draft copy in early January.
Okay.
Trouble is,
You let me know when you're ready, and
yeah.
we'll...
Now, just for your information, we had a committee designated at some point. We couldn't find a record of it in the side bend, and so.
So, in as much as you've already taken the helm, I'd like you to continue, at least through the new year. Mr. Barron's, of course,
Yeah.
and Mr. Costa would be automatic. Mayor, would you like to be part of that master plan review?
No, we gotta be careful. I don't know, this is a legal thing. Any more than 3 constitutes.
Yeah, but those aren't members. Only you're the member. The 2 other professionals. That doesn't constitute anything.
Okay,
Member.
all right, all right.
Correct?
Voting people. Okay, all right.
So, 1, 2, 3.
Okay, all right, so.
1, 2, 3.
Let me
Good. Should I?
propose,
There you go.
It works.
I didn't,
Can you
He volunteered
put
me.
that in the minutes?
he volunteered you.
So 1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3, okay,
Subcommittee.
okay, got it. So maybe what we'll do is,
I'm gonna write that.
when we're ready for a markup for the committee members, we'll have them shoot out a draft
Yep,
copy
and then if you
to those, and.
get together with the
when we
mayor,
get-
set up a meeting with...
Right, when we get together in January, maybe we get some input
Mhm.
in the final part.
I just have 2 questions. Tom, In Hillsdale, we're looking to update our master plan as well. It's my understanding that charging stations for electric vehicles are a required element, so that's going to be part of the updated master plan as well.
We haven't discussed that,
You haven't discussed that?
no.
Okay.
Well, that's great, we can throw that in there.
I have the
But
bill. I can forward it over via
Well-
email to either one of you.
We went over the existing one. I do have, part of the reexamination process is reviewing policy changes and assumptions, so that would be something that would fall into that
You
category.
want me to forward you what I have?
Sure, please.
That would have to be on larger, developments.
But it's a required element, so we're going through this exercise with a couple of my other.
Yeah, you
boards.
have a big one going on over there,
So
yeah.
I'll send it over and then you
Yeah,
just
well, send it to Tom.
incorporate it, okay.
Okay.
And then just one other thing, the year-end review, is that being handled as well?
Last year, Ed Alter and I.
The year summary, basically.
So
Yeah.
we'll provide an updated one this year, Ed
Okay.
Alter and I, or
Okay.
one for you or whoever.
Yeah.
I'm gonna look for that email now.
So is that master plan review a venue to discuss something like we brought up this evening?
So what'll happen is you guys will get together, you'll figure out what needs attention, and then we'll have a work session and we'll all go over it together.
So just as an example, the builder's building 34.7% and leaving nothing
That'll be
but
something
stone.
that the board will
That's
look
something
at
we
to
can
recommend
Well,
to the.
that's something we can put in what I just said, that item 5, the last item, that
But I think that would also have to go for an ordinance change as well, if we were gonna change that.
It's something to discuss during that, because I think it's something that needs
well, it would
some
be a
attention.
policy thing, because they're coming in for a variance.
Mhm.
It's not a new,
Right, but if the borough were to change the ordinance from 35 to 30,
yes.
that would give us that little bit of flexibility we need where we're not going to 45, 50%.
Well, that's true, but the main problem you have, this town is almost totally developed.
Not the houses. These guys are grabbing up these colonial.
I recognize that.
Then you'd have
But
the issue where
what
you'd
my
suddenly have a lot of
issue is-
non-conforming properties. I don't know if
Yeah,
that's
my
a
issue
problem.
is, a lot of the stuff's already been put in, all right, the patios, the one we had in Berkeley.
Right.
Okay, a lot of that's existing already. Yes.
Well,
We can
isn't there
send a
also an
recommendation
issue
to
of
mayor and
legal
council?
existing and non-legal existing?
Correct.
I mean, people who put things in without permits, when we're not, it doesn't seem, and I could be wrong, because this is a new role I'm taking on, it certainly wasn't something I was involved in on the council, because I wasn't liaison to the building department. But it appears that when they go for a CO, there doesn't seem to be a review where they're looking at what the property was and what the property is.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you get a contractor to do it without a permit, and then they come to us, and,
The hardship's there already, yeah.
but it's an illegal hardship, and so to me, and again, I'm not an expert on any of this, we would need to create a policy
Yes.
that the building department can't grant a CO to a illegally improved property without it coming to us.
Yes. Yeah. How can I put this diplomatically? The building department, my opinion, over the years has cut out their niche. What they do and what they don't do. A good example is they basically do not review or inspect site improvements.
I'm sorry,
You can shut that off.
because we do have a new zoning officer.
Well, as of this past June.
Mhm. So, and Tom has been reviewing, because
No.
Tom and I have talked about a few different sites.
Well, I'm, fulfilling the function of zoning officer, and so what I typically review are what I call zoning permit applications. So that's when somebody goes to
Mhm.
CHAZ, they have a plan to expand their driveway and so forth. Obviously, if somebody doesn't submit an application, they just do it.
Right.
Then we don't know unless they get caught or someone, rats them out on it. In the case of the CO, I typically don't get involved. If it, let's say, I guess if there's some minor interior work or something like that, there's typically not a zoning review. We can look into establishing a process, perhaps.
There has-
But I believe that the process is, if somebody's gonna do this legally, they go to the building department, they submit their plans. The plans are reviewed by the construction official, and if he sees anything irregular, he kicks it over to you
Correct.
for
If somebody
review.
goes through the
like
legal
these people here.
recourse and
Mhm.
submits permits, we absolutely review
If
it.
they come in without, if they do the work on the sly without, there's really no way for this board to act, because we're not an enforcement agency, we are a code agency, or whatever you want to call it. Well, we're not an enforcement agency, we can't enforce the codes in the town for people that don't, that don't come before us and let us know what they're doing. That being said, it might be prudent moving down the road for your expertise to expand a little bit, to work with the code officer, that if he sees something that doesn't make sense, or he looks at a plan and something popped up that wasn't in the plan before, to go to you and at least advise you what had happened there. And then
But if we don't have some sort of process
Correct.
when a purchase is made, then what we're doing is validating an illegal process. We're rewarding bad behavior. And then what happens is the resident who does it right gets the raw end of the stick,
Mhm.
and they've already come to the council and complained about that. And, I think that in the master plan and recommend, that this body needs to make recommendations to the mayor and council to, because I'm not an expert on this, a reasonable process before granting a CO.
So it sounds like some sort of survey review. And we could talk about the different
Yeah. I think
aspects.
I think you also need some more due diligence done in the building department,
In terms of
review of drawings, especially.
construction or site or both?
Well, I'm more concerned with site as a land use board. All right. My experience has been that they were only considering the building envelope. That's it. That's the feeling I walk out with.
I mean, not since I've been involved.
All right, maybe things have changed. So
Anything that's called a zoning permit application for any type of site work,
you should see.
I do see that.
Okay, all right.
And the construction official goes over every permit, he has to.
Well, it's
He has
gotta
to
sign
approve
off
them,
on
it's
it.
done.
Okay. We should consider something.
I think we should.
Point taken.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, that's why I pointed out that section. Think of these things and.
These are the issues that come up when we're in a boom economy. The same issues came up back in 2003, 2004, when they were, building 40-foot high skyscrapers on
We had
Monroe Avenue.
we had the
And we
big
put the height.
we had the big
Yep.
mansion, yes. I
So
went through
that wall, and the whole height requirement thing was to eliminate those 7,500 square foot homes
Yeah.
on a 60 by 100 property. So, we're faced with that again.
Mhm.
The builders have found a way around it by maximizing their floor area ratio to the max and not including amenities that a typical homeowner would want. And then the homeowner has to come in here and they have to do barrel raise.
Yeah,
So it might be prudent to move the floor area ratio down to 30%.
we don't.
And that way it gives us that area of flexibility.
And I wonder if there's a way of, when you are allowing these bigger houses to be made, that if they have these other amenities involved, that they can get some sort of, get to the 35 or whatever number. So if they're building a 3,000 square foot house and they have a 2-car driveway and a reasonable patio,
The remedy
That they-
was, the
and if
remedy
they
in
don't, then they have
2003,
to be stopped
2004
at 30 or whatever number that is.
was to lower the height requirement. And it worked. And it may be up to the mayor and council to look at saying, let's lower the ratio down to 30%.
But I want to kind of address that. I think in this day and age, a 1-car driveway is just not reasonable.
I agree.
So if we go to 30, then we're just making it impossible. Everything's going to come before us. I don't necessarily think we should go, I agree with you. If we lower it to 30, we create pressure. And because then 20% above 30 would be 36, and that would come down to 42. But I think, and I'd like this body to consider recommending to the mayor and council that we consider an ordinance that allows an 18.5-foot driveway in front of all homes within certain reasonable expectations.
4-bedroom homes require 18 feet.
Yeah, because right now we're having a street parking problem. We have streets that have no parking between 9 and 11. And I think that in this day and age, it's not reasonable to have a one-car driveway. I think that's what we saw today, and we all agreed that they should have it. But if we're going to then say, okay, we're going to have an 18.5-foot wide driveway, and we're also going to go 30, then there's going to be...
No, it would be also. It would be one or the other. Again, if you look at a lot of these new construction homes, what the builders are doing is saying, we're just going to put a one-car garage, we're not going to do two, and a one-car driveway, and then if the
They come back and they say...
they're going to come put a two-car driveway.
And it's not their problem.
And it's not fair. It's not fair to the town, it's not fair to the residents.
And the residents don't know, because they're coming here and they're saying, oh, I can always park on the street. You know, if the borough ever adopted a no overnight parking, that would be a real problem.
It's a 2-car straight driveway, I park in the street half the time, and all I have is 2 steps down and no patio in my backyard. I don't know exactly what my coverage is, but I'm sure.
Oh, don't worry about it. No.
So if that became the new...
that's what they're building. You know,
should I say custom, that the builder would come in, when the builder built a home, he would have a 2-car wide driveway. If that was the standard, they would all have to follow it if they wanted to be competitive with other homes. And eventually they're going to have to make a somewhat smaller footprint if they don't want to get a variance.
Right. And
to accommodate, you have the driveway, you got to make the footprint smaller and everything will be nicer.
And that'll take that 4th master bedroom that these guys are getting paid a premium for and shrink it down to an appropriate sized bedroom with a smaller closet so they can have that coverage.
Eileen, what do you think?
Well, I'm thinking the other option would be to leave the total coverage, what's allowed, but reduce what you can do for a building. So determine what a typical 2-car driveway and a typical patio, and then back into a building coverage. So instead of telling them they have to have a 2-car driveway, you max out the building coverage that's allowed, still allowing the same lot coverage that we always had.
That sounds like a great idea, too.
Either they can have it, so it allows them to have those 2 things. You know, if you're telling you your house has to be...
But it's not forcing them to have it if they do.
Right, they have to be a little bit smaller, but when you're building one of these houses, you have to allow to either put it in or allow to have some sort of 20 by 20 backyard patio and a 2-car.
Yeah, there's an issue in one of my towns where everybody has a built-in pool. So now what they ended up, they would come back in for a variance for the pool. So what they did is, if these lots don't have a pool, their total lot coverage is reduced of allowable. Allowable lot coverage without a pool is lower than the maximum lot coverage, because that town, everybody comes in for a pool. So it would be the same kind of thing, where you keep the building coverage lower.
There was a proposal quite a few years back when there was a lot of problems when there were snowstorms and people with 1-car driveways had no place to park. I think it was suggested at that time, it was 10 or 15 years ago.
So we changed the ordinance with that?
No, it was never changed, but the suggestion was at the time, since so many people have a problem when they only have 1-car driveway and they have no place to park their 2 cars and they were getting their cars towed away, that if you had an existing home with a 1-car driveway, you'd be permitted to make a 2-car wide driveway. Well, you could make a 2-car wide driveway without going for a variance for an existing home.
Oh, we didn't do that, no.
No,
We simply allow an emergency for them to park on the lawn.
But I think that would be something to visit, to take some of the burden off people in snowstorms and everything else, that if, not for a new home, but an existing home, if you have a 1-car driveway, that you can go and get a permit for a 2-car wide driveway, regardless if you're over the impervious coverage.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to give away that much authority to the builders.
I'm not saying for new construction, I'm just saying for existing homes. It would have to be...
Yeah, grandfather in some... I think
Because
this
if you know as
yeah.
well as I do, I mean, it's a disaster
I'm
right
not,
now.
I'm not an
People won't
expert
go
on
backwards.
this. I just think that this is, I see the pressure, I hear it from the residents, and I think this, and I would be more comfortable as mayor and council to have had a recommendation that had come through this body that was
Which is what the
consistent
whole-
with the master plan.
What it's all about.
Yeah, and the fence is another thing, you know, how are we gonna calculate it? Because from the way Tom described it, it's vague at best.
I just
Not
think
very clear.
if it was, if it was my next door neighbor and there was a 10-foot, all of a sudden this 10-foot looking wall
Yeah,
in my backyard, it would bother me.
it would do two to me, but for me, it was 6 feet from their level backyard. On the side you were talking about, you were talking about on the east side,
For that person, but they're affecting the neighbor.
I know.
That's the problem.
I don't
If it
know.
was on their side, I wouldn't care. If they're asking for it, it's on their side, let them have it. But when they're affecting somebody else,
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
Fence-wise, from a fence standpoint, we can have a normal, self-standing fence height, which you have now, pretty much. Fences mounted on top of the wall, then we should have another category where they should not exceed some total height.
And would that be something that we would be recommending from our committee to the board and the board to
Correct.
the,
Well,
the
yeah,
mayor and
yeah,
council?
yeah, yeah. In other words, we have 6-foot side yard now.
Yeah.
If somebody's got a 4-foot high all right, say 3 foot, because you don't have to go to the, through Costa's review, okay? And then you put a 6 foot on top of that, you now have 9
it's
feet.
still 9 feet.
All
How
right,
about
that goes against, just plain aesthetics, if nothing else, all right?
Well, the
It
only,
becomes an annoyance. A 9-10 foot high barrier becomes an annoyance, okay? That's poor planning. Yeah,
So
Well,
maybe,
there's a house on Howland.
yeah, I know the one with the step,
I mean, the entire property is raised,
yeah,
and then there's a 6-foot fence.
yeah.
So from their neighbor's I think it's a driveway, or from the neighbor's property to the top of the fence, has to be 12 feet.
Yeah.
Might be 15 or 18.
Wow, I don't want to know.
I mean, that's affecting the sunlight.
Yeah.
but whose side is it affecting? The person who put up the fence?
Well, it's on who's,
What's in the front yard, too. I mean, you drive-
no, we're talking side.
You know the one I'm
rear
talking
yards.
about?
I know exactly.
Because in this case, unfortunately, the 6-foot fence is affecting the neighbor, but it's their level.
Well, that's why I didn't vote against it. I personally would
Yeah.
have liked to have seen them lower it as a courtesy, but
Right,
they're,
But I think
unlike
their
unlike
thing
the
was to
east,
keep them the same height
yeah.
all the way around, so you don't get the side yard here and up. But on the other side of the property, again, I think something needs to be addressed where you can't put in a wall, a needed retaining wall, so you can add on top of it.
So you can
So on the
have
west side you're talking about.
Yeah, so that 2-foot fence that turns into 8, we can't allow people to
there should
put
be,
in that.
there should be a maximum total height, barrier height, let's put it that way, all right?
Yeah, honestly, I was on the fence voting no.
I mean, if
on
it's
that.
necessary,
Because
then
of
maybe
this.
you tier it. You say, okay, then you have to have 5 feet in between the next tier if you need.
I think we can all agree that's something the borough has to
The
address.
severity of it.
And we can address that through the,
Well, I think we had, master plan wise, you identifying potential problems or things to consider. That's a start. Then we go from there.
okay.
Ordinances or recommendations or whatever.
Yeah, I personally, as a councilman and now as mayor, I'm not comfortable with the council proposing these changes
No.
in and of themselves.
No,
I think they have to come,
They
they
should.
have to be organic, they have to come from what you guys are seeing.
It's supposed to come from
Yeah.
the body.
Yeah, it should normally.
Yeah, but on my 8 years on the council, I don't remember this body ever making a recommendation to the council.
Did you do it last year with that?
We prepared an annual report. I think we had it on the agenda at some point, and
Right.
I don't recall.
There have been,
But we never took action,
Okay.
to my knowledge.
there have been some
Maybe I just
discussions
missed
that I
something.
had with Ed and even with Sandy that would go back to you guys and it would get discussed and,
Disappear.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't want it to disappear anymore.
Right.
That's why I want it to be formal. I want it not to be embedded in a report. I would rather it to be a separate recommendation.
Well, okay. We gotta start with the master plan
Yeah.
update.
That's where it starts,
That's where it starts, yeah.
and we're in good hands with that.
We are.
So,
Well,
before I
it is.
entertain a moment for adjourn, I just, this is the last meeting of the year.
Yeah.
I wish to
Yes.
thank everybody up here. You guys, you know, we're all volunteers. I appreciate the input from every one of you. It's pretty cool that this board has, almost everybody that's here has some sort of connection with their profession to land use, whether it's a realtor, engineer, building owner, realtor. That's pretty cool. And there hasn't been a time, I can say, in actually 24 years, that I've seen any acrimony up here, and I like that. We all have our feelings, we all have our opinions. At the end of the day, we do what's best for the town, and we do what's best for the applicant. And I'm very proud of that with everybody. And on that note, I wish you all a
Can I just put into the
holiday.
record, I went to the municipal league, I took the 6-hour course, and then I took I think it was a 2-hour case law on land use, and that I hope to continue to educate myself in this, and just because I'm elected, I don't want to.
Absolutely looking forward to having you up here with us.
Did you do the stormwater management training,
Yes, no, I didn't do it down there, I did the online version.
the 45-minute one?
Yeah.
I think almost everybody's compliant with that. I talked to Ed about it the other day.
I was told that once I become mayor, I have to do it again.
Every year. We all have to.
Oh, okay.
I think it's every year.
He had,
I
I thought he had
was-
sent that it's during an elected cycle
For new board members.
and for new board members.
Okay.
I have one board that hasn't done it at all.
Well, we have,
Never.
and I believe that we're all in compliance, but if we're not, please,
That's gonna change.
20 minutes.
The JIF requires it?
So on that, if anybody else has anything else?
Yes, wish everybody Merry Christmas.
Yes.
Merry Christmas.
And
Happy Hanukkah.
Good New Year. And what?
Happy Hanukkah.
Thank you, I'm not Jewish. No.
I don't know, I'm just saying.
Okay, yeah,
we
you
can do
know what?
Hanukkah.
Give me whatever you're.
And I'll celebrate Hanukkah, I don't care.
Yeah.
And last, I would be remiss if I didn't, again, thank our secretary. By the way, I didn't know you worked for Paul. Paul and I, longtime friends. I've known him
Oh,
for
wow.
15 years, 20 years.
Well, now I'm not in the Port Lee office anymore. We
Yeah.
opened the satellite in Costa
Mhm.
Rica, so that's the other partner.
So we appreciate what you do. I want you to specifically say that. And on that, I entertain, again,
Happy Kwanzaa and any other holidays that individuals may.
we welcome you up to the mayor.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved?
No.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed, any abstained? Wonderful.
Don't you have to approve somebody to take